Looking at partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today throughout the country, definitely rain forecasted for later, highs of 25 and lows of 15 today. In Nyeri at 16 degrees, it's mostly cloudy. We'll see how that changes as the sun comes up. 23 degrees the high with forecasted thunderstorms for the afternoon. It's partly cloudy in Nakuru at 15 degrees. We'll see highs of 24 today. Also rain forecasted for later parts of the morning. In Eldoret and partly cloudy at 13 degrees. We'll see rain later then with highs of 23 and lows of 13. Kisumu currently at 21 degrees is partly cloudy. And we'll see the sun come up but then open up into thunderstorms and rain showers later with highs of 28 and lows of 20. Rain is already coming down in Malindi at 26 degrees. We'll see highs of 30 and lows of 26. However, we'll have cloudy conditions throughout the day. It's mostly cloudy in Mombasa, and it will remain this way for most of the day with highs of 30 and lows of 26. Taking a look then into East Africa and Dar es Salaam, it's partly cloudy at 24 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 24. Kampala at 19 degrees will be partly cloudy most of the morning and into rain showers early in the afternoon with highs of 26 and lows of 18. Take a look south in Johannesburg at 10 degrees, clear skies this morning and sunny conditions through the day with highs of 22, but it'll get low though to 8 degrees. 26 degrees in Lagos and clear skies forecasted for most of the day with highs of 32 and lows of 25. In New York, clear skies this morning and a very warm Monday is what is forecasted. 18 degrees currently, we'll see highs of 24 and lows of 16. Paris at 13 degrees is mostly cloudy this morning with highs of 21 and lows of 12 through the day. And finally in London this morning at 10 degrees, we'll see clear skies. However, later on, we'll experience foggy conditions with highs of 20 and lows of 19.
All right, let's start the day with numbers. 465 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Kenya.
Yeah.
What are the numbers like worldwide?
Well, easily hit 3.5 million. And over the weekend, it took us well over that number. 3,566,197 cases now around the world. Remembering that this includes deaths as well as recovered cases. 248,285 deaths with 1,154,023 recovered cases. Necessary for us to look at countries by number, still taking the American system by storm, unfortunately, with 1,188,122 cases in the United States. And now on Friday, there were 65,000 deaths. Mm-hmm. Right now, there are 68,598 deaths. Between Friday and Sunday night, the U.S. has lost 3,500 people. So the numbers continue to rise, and we're getting to the point where they're getting to the point where they're calling it ridiculous. They don't understand. In the same time as many states are calling for opening up, you know, and it's as they're asking for this, more people are dying, more cases, and you shudder to think what will happen when they do open up. Mm-hmm. And this is then allowed into the open. If we think the numbers are high now, from all indications, if this happens, they're likely to see many, many more deaths. Mm-hmm. Surgeon General for the United States is warning this same thing and saying, if this is what we are seeing, and we have lockdowns in most states, what we're likely to see if we release these measures is that it will be unprecedented numbers of infections and deaths. From all indications, it looks like that may be the case.
Actually, there are some analysts, they say it's a weekend of analysis and looking at all of these things. Some analysts are looking at this and comparing it with the Spanish flu of 1918, where initially there were measures. Then when things seemed to be under control, they, eased up the measures. And then there was another second wave, which was now much more, much worse than the initial wave of the Spanish flu.
Celebrating too soon.
Yeah, it could be they're opening up too soon because, as you can see, The US initially, remember, if you compare, and I'd like us to actually just look at the African numbers, if you compare the response that the United States had versus the response that African countries had, you'll find that African countries started some measures early. Look at a country like Uganda, for example, where you close your borders, you start testing and whatnot, you put things under control very fast. But the US, there was an initial stage of denialism. Then after that, there was, not sure what to do. By the time they're actually saying, now we are putting in measures, we are restricting movement and all of these other things, physical distancing, masking, it was already too late.
A couple of weeks too late.
Yeah, and remember, by the time you're making a diagnosis of COVID, you're 2 weeks late at the very least.
There you go.
So now the numbers that you're seeing now, the 1.1 million or so, are 2 weeks back. So it means you have another 2 weeks, 1 month to actually find out anyone else. So they still have a long way to go.
I tend to agree with you because if you look at some of the numbers in Africa, for example, if you look at Nigeria, which has a population of 200 million people, and if you look at a city like Lagos, just Lagos, a state like Lagos, the city itself has 20 million people. The chances of mass infections were huge.
It is.
Very,
it is,
very scary.
Definitely.
But the measures that were put in place, just as you said, has seen the entire country with just 2,588 cases.
Yeah.
It could have been worse. It could have been much worse by now. If we look at Ghana, for example, 2,169 cases. And this is President Nana saying, you guys, look, this is not something that we're joking with. Lockdown has been in place. And with the lockdown, this is what they've been able to find. Now, if we look at other countries on the continent, for example, the numbers that we're seeing out of South Africa are 6,793 cases, and they have been on lockdown, extended lockdown.
Some extended, serious lockdown.
Well into the end of May is what they're saying.
And in addition to that, you'll realize that a country like South Africa has been doing serious testing.
Yes, they have.
To identify and isolate early. So you'd find that, yes, the numbers could be high, but it's because it's as a result of testing.
There you go. Same thing is happening in Egypt, where you have almost 6,500 cases. Morocco with almost 5,000 cases. Algeria with 4,500 cases. But then interestingly, if we look at the countries where yes, we've seen out of Kenya 465 cases. Testing has increased. We're looking at, the promise of mass testing now this week. In 2 days, 54 cases, and that's in 48 hours. It means that more testing is taking place with the promise that authorities would ramp up testing. And then we've seen hotspots, and because of they can be only claimed hotspots because there's been testing that has been taking place in those areas.
Exactly.
You can't claim a hotspot as a hotspot if testing has not been taking place. And then if you want to look at Rwanda, with what they've done, easily could be, Rwanda and Uganda could be poster children for lockdown working for the world, for the globe.
Exactly.
259 cases in Rwanda in the last 2 months with 0 deaths. All right? In Uganda, the number is even lower because Uganda only has 89 cases, again with 0 deaths. And Museveni said in no uncertain terms, he even deported Ugandans. People who came into the country as Ugandans and were tested positive, he basically said, no, go back to where you came from. When this is over, then we can sort that out. So in terms of the measures, we can see that it actually works.
And the measures in Uganda, by the way, started a lot earlier. There were people who had traveled, from the hotspots like China.
Yeah.
Ugandans working in China, and they came into the country. They entered Kenya, and Kenya, you know what was happening at the airport. They filled out the Ebola form, and they were told to go and self-isolate. But these Ugandans could not cross over into Uganda because they knew what was happening in Uganda. Exactly. They knew, in Uganda, it's going to be more stringent and more. So they self-isolated. They actually did self-isolate in Kenya, but they did not cross over into Uganda. That time, Uganda is not even talking about it, but everybody knows this is what's going to happen.
Right.
So by the time Museveni is actually now coming out to say, listen, you people, you're going to lock down. Measures had already taken place a long time earlier.
And if you look at the cases in Uganda, they are imported and they're from Kenya.
Yes.
They're getting people from Kenya, truckers and other people who've crossed the borders because of the nature of our borders.
Yep.
So you find that instituting measures early has actually worked. Another country that is doing well is Ethiopia. You would think that Ethiopia, being a travel hub, will suffer the same fate as Kenya. But you realize they are at 135 so far in a span of 2 months because of instituting measures. And even some of the cases that they have, I saw one was a Kenyan who crossed the border. So you find that when measures are started early, then it's a good thing. Yeah. And then looking at the African numbers in general, Africa as a whole has had 1,799 deaths out of the 44,513 confirmed cases. That means there's something right that we are doing as a continent.
And they're still wondering what.
And they're still wondering what
exactly.
They are. Yeah. Let's look at Sierra Leone, for example, who, before they even had one case, had instituted a state of emergency, and they deployed the army, and they said, we're closing all our borders. Nothing is happening here. And once they had done that, they basically barricaded the country. After that, they began testing. Until now, 166 cases with 8 deaths. And we see Sierra Leone as one of the countries that learned from Ebola, because Ebola devastated Sierra Leone. And so they have experience with something like this, and they said, well, okay, in this case, this is what we are going to do. Yeah. You can't see COVID the way you can see Ebola, but we've learned the lessons, and we're going to go with it. So you can see, again, as an example of what could actually happen when we're serious about this.
And so I like comparing the West African countries with some of the East Asian countries that had already suffered the outbreaks of SARS early on in 2000. You'll find that those countries that were affected by SARS back then are not as affected by COVID as you would expect, because they learned from those epidemics, and they put in measures to do tracking of people, tracing, testing, isolation. So it's the same, the same principle. All you do is just now
you tweak it to fit into...
Yes, to fit into the current public health emergency that you have. So you find that possibly, as a country, we are... this is the first real epidemic that we've had. The other ones have been scares. Remember when Ebola was there, there was a heightened alert and response, but then there was nothing. But now, I think we are going to learn our lessons, and hopefully it doesn't come with a human cost.
The only thing that we also hope is that we're able to rein in on people who are trying to cash in on this pandemic, because I think those are the competing interests. The whole issue of testing and where the testing is taking place, where the quarantine is taking place, and isolation, the entire management of this, there's two parallel forces at work here, and that's a sad bit. We'll continue discussing this shortly, and also take a look at the headlines. This is a situation of Kenya's biggest conversation. 6:30. Let's take a look at traffic shortly.
Building up on Mombasa today. Where are you guys going? It's a Monday morning, I know, but we've been told to stay home, and we put here to tell you to stay home. But it seems that traffic is already heightened right around the Gateway Mall. It's picking up and getting to the corner of the JKIA turnoff. It's then going towards Cabanas, and that has built up a little bit already. Heading then down towards General Motors. So Mombasa Road is what we're looking at today. Eastern and southern bypasses are open, though, no problem. They still take you very little time to get into the CBD. However, we do have a bit of a hold up there. On Thika Road, trying to get into Nairobi from the Pangani underpass, not a headache at all. You'll get in there quite easy this morning. Most of the roads are looking quite good. We'll take a look at what it looks like in a short while. You see anything that we should know about, do let us know. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us, and we'll spread the word.
Shake, 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 Spice up your life.
The situation, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning, Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Dr. Mercy Korir. Siti Muga is away for the week. Now, let's take a look at the headlines. What we have in the Standard and the Nation, basically, is we're back to the political headlines. The Standard says DP allies plot takeover. That's what they have there. So they're saying that stung by the forced changes to Jubilee, Deputy President William Ruto's men now plan to convene an official National Executive Committee meeting to invalidate the changes. Is this a scare, or will the DP be bold enough to take on his own boss? Page 2 gets that story. And one of those issues that, keeps cropping up and down, the infighting within Jubilee, back and forth. So now they want to hold their own National Executive Committee meeting so that they can go and say there are no changes to the National Management Committee. Tuju says nobody can really call for such a meeting. I'm an acting SG. There's no proper party official. Caleb Kosichani, who's the Deputy Secretary General, says, look at the party constitution. We have many options. We are preparing for the meeting where we intend to right all the wrongs in Jubilee.
The question is, though, will it happen in the way in which it's plotted out to happen in this way? Takeover of what? And it seems that they're trying to fight a battle on one end whereby the battle is not actually being experienced. Taking a fight to where there's no battleground, it seems. Because somebody's invalidating, Tuju, just by what he's saying, invalidating all of this and saying there really is no issue here. So where are you bringing a fight to?
It's just back and forth, I think. And in the end, the owner of the party will remain in the party, and then everybody else will leave.
Coalition government, my friend, is coming up, and
everybody else will leave. Uhuru Kenyatta had this kind of a battle in 2002 and 2001 with Gideon Moi over the control of KANU. He was the chairman of KANU. He ended up leaving KANU to go to an unknown party called TNA. And this is the same thing that is going to happen.
The aggrieved party will leave.
The owner of this party will remain with the party. We'll end up seeing who the owner of this party actually is.
Things will unfold.
The other person will leave.
Anyway, when I've been seeing these headlines and even this one, the one thing that actually has been coming to my mind is, imagine if it was before Corona. All the funerals, all the church
this
services,
would have taken center stage.
It would have been noise
Wow.
all over the place. So I've been wondering, where are they congregating to make all this noise? And
they're having Zoom meetings.
Yeah, they better be having Zoom. They better not be congregating anywhere, because we can the hazmat guys will go after them.
We know, for example, the way we saw Sonko had gone to Ruto's palace and spent some very many hours there. Probably even Caleb Kositani has done the same. They go, they meet. There is enough space
physical
in Karen.
Karen.
You can just sit on the ground, on the lawns of Karen, the DP's residence, and have this conversation. Yeah, even Tuju has a huge home in Karen. You can also just do the same. Meet out there, discuss.
So you reckon this is what was
Kula nyama moja, nyama mbili, have talk on the phone, call the other person. But they're going to hold an NEC. That's when is this going to happen?
When and how?
When is this going to happen? You're
I'm thinking about it.
Things that the earliest you can do this is August or September. It's too early to even start playing your cards.
Unless the political class no longer thinks that the coronavirus is a threat.
Well, I don't think it's just the political class. From what we've been seeing around the country, I think everybody's thinking that there's no threat. We haven't died in numbers. There are not people falling in the streets like we expected it to be. I think everybody has that feeling like corona is a thing of the past. And it's been here for a month. It's not really affected people to the
really
dizzying numbers that we're seeing around the
be.
world. So, business, look at the roads already. Going into, we heard reports of people going into the city Thursday, Friday, and it's packed.
Also, we copy a lot from what we see in the news. We saw in the news that other countries are locking down, and so we put ourselves in a lockdown. Basically, we have never been on lockdown. Put ourselves on some lockdown. Now we are seeing the other countries are opening up. We're like, Spain are back out, China, Dubai. Let's also go back.
And there are those that never actually even closed in the first place, like Sweden.
And we are reading all about that and seeing, it's working. So the Nation headline.
Well, I will go to another headline. Well, clearly, reshuffle looms as war gets messy. That's the whole Ruto story saga. However, here's the thing. There are a couple of other things that are going on here. Magufuli goes for herbs from Madagascar I think that's an interesting one here because he's always seemed to go for a different approach to COVID from the neighbors, from the rest of the world, really. The first one was that when he had asked Tanzanians to really not worry about this thing, okay? It's not going to affect us the way it's affecting the rest of the world. And then voila, things changed and they began testing, and we've seen now animals and plants and fruit trees even being affected with COVID in Tanzania. All right. He said that he will dispatch a plane to Madagascar to get a herbal treatment for COVID-19. I quote, I have communicated with Madagascar and they have already written a letter saying they have COVID-19 treatment. Thank goodness Daktari is here today. We will send a plane to bring the drugs so that Tanzanians can also benefit, the head of state said in a television address, adding that he's working day and night. The herbal tonic, marketed as COVID Organics, has been touted as a cure for the coronavirus by the country's president. COVID Organics is produced from Artemisia plant, the source of an ingredient used in malaria treatment. But the World Health Organization has said there's no proof of any cure in the herbal tonic. Tanzania has reported 480 cases of coronavirus since the pandemic broke out. Kenya has 465. In his Labor Day address to the nation on Friday, Magufuli asked Tanzanians to stop working and to keep working and ignore naysayers who don't wish Tanzania well. Some people are asking us to close down our markets. Where will we buy food for 6 million people in Dar es Salaam? President Magufuli asked as he branded those asking for closures short-sighted. So there are a couple of things going on here.
There are many
as far
things.
as they're concerned, number one, there is a cure for this thing and we can get it from Madagascar. Number two, those who want us to close down our markets and our borders are naysayers. They don't wish well for Tanzania. And number three, we're going on with business as usual. Keep working. We're getting this medicine. Everybody will have it and we'll be fine.
You know, the interesting thing, and this is the problem with looking at the coronavirus or countries on one lens. Madagascar's first cases were confirmed on 20th of March. That's just like a week after Kenya. So far, they have 149. But before then, they had already banned international flights early on. I think on 17th that, we'll no longer get international flights. And they started all those other measures. This herbal treatment actually came in later on after all these other measures have been put in place. So Madagascar having low cases, it's not because they've been taking a herbal treatment from a plant that makes malaria medicine. It's because there are other things that play in the background. And in the same thing we were saying about some of the East Asian countries where now when you remember that when we had a whole, should we wear masks, should we not wear masks? And you're saying like in those countries they've been wearing masks, but we forgot that they were testing, isolating, putting people in quarantine. They were doing a lot more in the background. So there's a problem with looking at one thing one-sided. However, my opinion on the herbal medicine is, right now we are looking for anything and everything that will help us.
Everybody's looking for medicine.
Yeah, sort out coronavirus. So bring the herbal medicine, let it be scrutinized, let it be validated. It can be tested. There are ethical ways of, instituting clinical trials with that herbal medicine. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we move on to something else.
As long as it doesn't kill you, as long as you're not talking about something that is harmful to the human body.
Exactly.
If it's herbal stuff that we've been talking about doing lemon and ginger for a long time. And lemon and ginger, what does it do? It boosts your immunity, gives you vitamin. It's the same thing. And I think this whole story of herbal treatment in Tanzania is not just coming from the president. You've seen even Anna Tibaijuka, respected person who worked at senior level at the UN. She's now an MP in TZ. She stood in parliament and said, look, guys, as our scientists are looking for medicine, let's also look back at what we've done traditionally.
Well, and you know that they've been very big on traditional medicine.
We have used these things traditionally. They've never harmed us. We know what we need to do. When you're feeling this kind of sneezing, a homa, what you need to get. Let's just go back there and do the same things that we've been getting as we wait for medicine. I also saw another minister over the weekend as well, Tanzanian minister, saying the same thing. Go back. Me, I don't know I'm from which tribe, which community. we have been doing this thing of covering yourself in a steaming nyungu and inhaling
some herbs.
And some herbs. Go and do the same.
But remember, anyway, that most of our medicines, if not all of them, come from herbs.
The herbal
They have
based,
just
right?
been refined and put into some nice tablets, packaged nicely, or in a bottle, in a syrup. So at the end of the day, those herbs just undergo a whole process to make it safe and to make it, efficient in a way that you can dose a certain way so that you don't get an overdose.
Yeah.
So, well, this is a time to be open to as many options as possible.
The issue that Magufuli raised yesterday, was it yesterday or was it on Saturday or Friday, about the testing, where he was saying, look, we saw these tests coming up and seeing numbers rising, and we started asking ourselves, hold on, do we trust these things? So he talked about how they went behind the scenes, undercover, and decided to present some fake samples to be tested. Got some samples from used motor oil, some pawpaw, birds, goats. All these things were taken for testing, and some of them were actually coming out with positive results, indeterminate. And he was wondering, so when a pawpaw has tested positive, so what does that tell us?
Good grief.
There are two things I would raise from, because I saw that clip, and anyway, there's a lot from that clip, but two things. One, I would expect that before Tanzania or any country started doing any tests, they would have validated their diagnostic kits. Because that's the same thing that has been happening here, because when you get all those diagnostic kits, like the ones that were donated by Jack Ma, which were donated to all African countries, the first thing the scientists, the laboratory technicians, and the lab scientists do is to validate. And
how is that done?
So you actually run these kits. You run them with a sample, a control sample, one that is negative, one that is positive, that is not from anyone, that has already been confirmed elsewhere that this is positive, this is negative. You run them so that you make sure that the one that has been tested to be positive actually comes out positive, and the one that is negative is actually negative. And you do it in like 3 labs with the same things, different sampling of the kits, so that you're sure that now this is it's legit, it's valid. Whatever we run from now, our samples that we get,
this batch has been confirmed. So they do it in batches.
Yes. So that's the first thing they should have done. So I would imagine, and knowing that Tanzania has a good medical system, because we even have doctors training in Tanzania and working in Kenya, that this would have been done. It's the bare minimum, so that then questions of other things testing positive or negative do not arise. The second thing that I thought of when I saw this was, we've seen dogs testing positive. There was a tiger in New York that tested positive.
Yep.
So for me, when an animal sample tests positive, I'm wondering, is there cross-infection from humans to animals, instead of saying that, this lab test is invalid because a goat tested positive? For me to raise a lot more questions.
It raises the questions.
Yeah.
Even a pawpaw. So
for a pawpaw, I could think, was there contamination? What is our lab processing? Because remember, lab testing is not just at the point of actually running that sample to see if it's negative or positive or inconclusive. It starts from the point of sampling. So let's say, for example, the person who was sampling had coronavirus and they contaminated that pawpaw sample.
That sample will turn out positive.
Yeah,
right?
and remember, the test kits detect the presence of the DNA. Of the virus. So you can imagine how small DNA is. So any small particle. So I would, if I were Tanzanians, if I was in the task force, it's a good thing that they did that behind the scenes, because then it gives you a moment to interrogate your lab processing, right from the sampling to the point of, releasing the results.
Yeah.
Was there any loophole? Was there any gap? Was there anything wrong?
Yeah.
Is there something that we can do better, instead of, dismissing that there could be something wrong? And it is not bad. It's not a bad thing to confirm cases. It's actually good, because then you are supposed to institute public health measures immediately after that. Whether you're isolating people, you're putting some people in quarantine, whether you're restricting movements or a partial lockdown in some places so that you contain the infection. So testing positive is actually something good that we should not look at it as if, now our numbers are high, this is bad, some people are against us and all manner of things.
Well, you have to look at it from Magufuli's side of the way he's viewing it. Like,
I've been unable to see it.
Right, I do think he's trying to wipe some egg off his face, though, because from what he said, I think he was really convicted that in the beginning, if we keep about our business and we pray and all of this, and he called 3 days of prayer, did all these wonderful things, he really felt that it would stem this. And then something totally different happens. He's got to find an outlet for the frustration.
12 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a situation.
Yes.
10 minutes to 7. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif, and your name is Nduoko, and your name is Dr. Mercy Korir. Dr. Mercy Korir is our guest host for the season. She is KTN's medical journalist. CT Muga is away for the week. The other headlines on the Standard. Mombasa headache as it records 19 of 30 new cases. Mm-hmm. The shadow of a total lockdown looms over the coastal city as new COVID-19 cases hit a high of 148, even as residents continue to shun testing centers. We've seen images, photos and videos coming out of Mombasa, especially during this time of Ramadan. People, when they're going to Futuru in the evening, and they still do the communal thing. And the governor came and said, look, yes, I know this is how we do it in this part of our world, but this is a serious time and we cannot continue living the same way. Especially raising issue of Mombasa Old Town. Mombasa Old Town, it's communal, it's town.
You can't tell people to,
it is not old
to
city.
break fast
It is old town. Houses are just one next to one another. It's a community. That's how they break fast in the evening. Come together as a community, they mingle, they join. So now we can't go to the mosque, but Modin is doing his thing in the mosque and we can hear it.
Yeah.
And we are celebrating together.
It's a tough one, this one, because, I remember that in the early days, C.S. Kagwe said, look, we're going to break a lot of tradition in terms of the way things normally happen. And we saw that, this is the first time in hundreds of years, for example, that the Hajj is not going to take place in Mecca. And so traditional things that people were used to doing is going to be very different. Breaking fast is a thing. It was not just coming to eat. It was a ceremony of then the day's events and then coming to break fast together before you get to the next day. But this obviously has to change. And we saw Governor Ali Hassan Joho quite upset the sentiments that he made. He was not a happy camper. And he said, you know what, guys? You're going to force me to lock this place down. I mean, I can understand it because I'm one of you. But if we go on in this manner, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah, you're forcing my hand on this.
But my question is, already Mombasa is closed from foreigners, quote unquote, entering and people coming out. So if you lock this place down, does it stop people from their communal habits?
The lockdown, basically, he's talking about the tight lockdown, like we're seeing in South Africa.
Don't leave your house.
Stay indoors. It's an indoor order. Nobody out in the streets.
So unless he does it like that and find ways of enforcing it. If you've been to Old Town, you know how those streets are. There's not even any room for physical distancing when you're even walking.
No, I mean, those streets themselves house is on this wall and the other person's house is
you
on
open your door and you're in
wall.
somebody else's house already.
There you go.
So even if they say you stay in your house, they have to find ways of enforcing that. And that raises the other question, and it's what Magufuli was asking, although he should have actually been answering instead of asking about feeding 6 million people. So you have to quickly think about how do you feed the population in that place during that particular time when you want them in.
Magufuli was even being facetious. I mean, the issue of feeding people and having markets open, it's been tried elsewhere in the world. I mean, it's not an issue of how can people access markets. In those countries where people are locked down in their homes, are they allowed to go shopping? Yes, they are. But it's also very well managed.
It's timed.
At what time do these people from this street go to the market? What do they do? How many people go to the market in a household? One person leaves the house to go to the market. It's very clear. It can be done.
Or you deliver the food stuff like what Rwanda, Uganda has done.
Yep.
So for me, for Joho, you should be thinking about how to enforce or how to implement that order instead of threatening people with lockdown. As you can see, people are not responding to threats anymore because they cannot see it.
I think that's another thing, because it is a threat. Until it actually comes into being, then you're probably not going to take it seriously. However, I think that Joho is steady in his resolve for this thing not to shut down, to kill Mombasa. Because first of all, we saw, even before we saw the many cases, even before the cessation of movement within county, he was very serious about how he has dealt in being called the poster child for COVID-19 and how operations should be from a systemic point of view. It has been him. So now saying that he's going to allow all of this then fall apart, I don't think he's going to. And he's not been working alone. He's been working with interested and vested parties. And even in this now, where we see more and more cases coming out of Mombasa, I don't think he's going to take if lying down either. I think we will get to that point.
I think
when he'll say, we're going to force this thing out.
Joho has been wanting a lockdown from day one.
He has.
If it was Joho's way, there would have been a lockdown and these cases would not be rising like this. I think somewhere when he's having those conversations with officials from the national government, he tells them, guys, I started saying this thing a long time ago. And even now I'm still saying, let's lock this place down. And of course, the national government is taking a long time to make that decision because it's not his call. He cannot order a lockdown. That is a security issue that has to come from the persons in charge of security. They will not, they'll take their time before they get into that point where they're saying, let's lock down Mombasa completely or let's lock down the country completely. They have to factor in very many other things. And I think that's where his frustration is coming from.
But he should not threaten people, because that clearly is counterproductive.
How?
I think how you should approach this. Remember, for such a thing to work, let's say, for example, how he wants everyone to come for, mass testing. Don't threaten people to come for mass testing. People will find ways of disappearing or not coming for it. He should work with people because he already has a goodwill of a lot of his constituents, a lot of the people, because of the work that he's put in place. Talk to people, make them understand why. And it's a good thing that he's also one of them. And if we draw parallels with the Muslim communities, let's say in the UK, where they've been really affected by the coronavirus because of the way of life, how they live, the culture. It's a very communal, society. And they've been actually affected. So if you draw parallels from what has happened with other Muslim countries or Muslim communities, and you put it here, then threatening people with forced mass testing is not going to work. people understand that this is why we are doing ABC and D.
Dr. Mercy, you're assuming that since the very beginning, this man has not been trying to speak to his people. He has been trying to speak to his people. He's getting to a point where his frustration is because he's saying, guys, I'm asking you, let's do this. You're not doing it, and people are dying. How many people are dead so far?
Eric, we've seen
because
what
of the few
what
of
militarization
you, because of the few of you who are refusing to think straight, you are putting the lives of many others in jeopardy, and I'm not going to allow you to continue doing that.
You've seen.
That's what I'm going to tell you. You stay indoors. If you don't stay indoors, I'm going to lock you up.
Fine. I don't disagree with staying indoors. What my problem is with mass testing and forced testing. And you've seen what quote unquote militarization, forced testing has done. We've had stories of bribery and all manner of unsound things happening when it comes to quarantine and isolation. You see, the thing with testing is once somebody is tested positive, for example, the tradition that is happening, let me call it tradition and practice that is happening in the country is that one, you're quickly whisked away to an isolation unit and you'll be admitted for at least 14 days, God knows for how long, at your own cost. The second one is that your family members, your immediate family members, will be whisked away also to somewhere at their own at your own cost if you're the breadwinner. And all your contacts will be whisked away at your own cost. So when you come out and threaten people that we must do mass testing, you must come for mass testing or else, people will not come because people are not really anti-testing but against the consequences. I like to call them consequences because they should be sound.
It's whatever else is happening.
Yeah, it should be sound public health intervention and people understand. So if that part would be taken care of, then people would be coming out and getting tested. And it would be easier after that for people to stay at home.
To take care of, they have set aside money to take care of quarantine. That now you'll not pay for quarantine. The county government has said, we are going to pay for quarantine.
Until we see or we hear somebody who's come out and say, I did not pay,
then we can't say
it's
at the same time
tumetenga tu as usual.
So
unless somebody comes out.
Top of the hour. Let's do today's proverb without really understanding what it means. All right? This is from Ghana. When the river dries up, we shall all see where the crocodile sleeps. I think that is a very straightforward proverb. When the river dries up, we shall all see where the crocodile sleeps. The river has dried up in Kenya.
Yeah.
You can clearly see the bedroom of the crocodile. This is the situation room. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. Good morning.
Let's see how things have changed this morning. Around about 7 o'clock, coming off of Mombasa Road, we still have some issues around Cabanas, and this starts off as far as the Gateway Mall, right around the SGR. It's held up, guys. So let's see. It'll open up. We know it's not going to last for too long. The road is still being constructed right around the ICD today, so we're going to see that affected. Let's take a look outside of Nairobi for a bit. The Narok-Maimahiu Highway is still being worked on, and we have a number of roads around the country that have been affected by flooding. And so that means that your planned travel may have to take a little bit of a dip. So you need to find out where that is and plan accordingly. Lusaka, Dunga, Bunyala Enterprise roads within the industrial area are moving very good and very well at this point. It's not going to be too much of a struggle to get in and out of town. Kingara Road, Naivasha Road intersection, same conditions, still being worked on, and we know that that has been on hold for a while. So Ngong Road, guys, you need to be a little bit careful when you're trying to ply the roads this morning. Apart from that, it looks good. You will not get stuck when you're coming off most places. Spice FM KE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert,
So we're taking a look at what's been covered in the newspapers this morning, and we're looking at the numbers, COVID-19 numbers, especially the announcements that have been made over the weekend. We are discussing Mombasa and what's happening in Mombasa. Mombasa Old Town is a hotspot. Governor Joho is a frustrated man. He went there, he was telling them, guys, please obey these rules. And if you don't do this, then we have to be forced to lock you people down and force you to stay indoors. And that's what you're saying, Dr. that you don't think that's a right approach to take. That he should go ahead and try and placate the people, try and teach them, try and show them why it's important to come out for testing, why it's important to obey these measures. And this is a conversation that has happened for the past 40 days, why it's important. They're still not listening to you.
And most importantly is to address the consequences of testing. And probably that is where they should start, addressing the consequences of testing. That where after we test, if you're positive, either you will. So for Old Town, maybe staying at home may not really be the right thing because of the people's way of lives. Like one house, you may be a household of at least 5 people or more. So if somebody tests positive and they have set up a very good isolation center at Technical University of Mombasa, somebody who's tested positive could be admitted there, and the remaining family members remain in quarantine at home. So if they have that really worked out well, you can start from there. Then tell people why they need to come out for mass testing because they are well catered for, their families will be well catered for, and why the remaining people need to adopt all these other measures that, it's Ramadan, yes, we understand, but now the world is facing something unprecedented. Yeah?
I think that, unfortunately, because of the manner in which this happens, we said this before, there's certain things that the governor has been able to do in Mombasa because of the partnerships that he has had between county and national government. Now, in this case, the quarantine testing protocol is entrenched in the national government through the Ministry of Health. There's certain things then he cannot do because of that factor. If you ask me, at the national level, the Ministry of Health, there's certain things that they should be able to enforce. Because if he's here crying and saying that I'm asking for mass testing, there's a reason he's asking for that. He wants to know just what the footprint looks like. So then he knows then what to do thereafter. If there's not adequate cooperation then between county and national government, between his goodwill to actually make something, because that's been tried and tested. We know the man has goodwill for the county. It's clear in the initiatives that he's set, and people have been able to cooperate thus far. Why wouldn't they go a step further to cooperate with him when it comes to mass testing? There's a reason. Unfortunately, though, what we have seen with mass testing in the country is that people get removed from their homes, whereby they could be quarantined at home. Then they are asked to go and sit in a place for 14 days before you get tested. They charge you for it. And then after 14 days, they have then the right to decide whether you're going to stay for another 14 days where they will charge you. So really, that's the reason why people don't want to get tested. Not because they feel their rights are being abused, but because of the fact that you're going to punish them if they do get found positive.
It's an exposure of the entire mismanagement of quarantine from day one. From the point they decided.
From the mandatory quarantine. That was on 23rd of March.
Not even mandatory. From the very beginning, people arriving in the country and they're asked to go and self-quarantine. The mismanagement of quarantine is where we're having a problem. People are arriving in this country, they were being given an Ebola form to fill to indicate whether they have come into contact with somebody with COVID-19. And this is an Ebola form. Have you been into Central Africa recently? And you've basically just arrived from China, from Italy, from Spain, all right? It was mismanaged. When we are seeing the deputy governor of Kilifi being asked to go home and all the other people arriving, and then you're told just go and self-quarantine, and there's no proper management of that, we saw that going wrong. We ended up with cases in the country. Then we went into government mandated quarantine. Government mandated quarantine, another mismanaged process from the first day.
The biggest.
Put them in NYS bus, cramp them in NYS bus, throw them in a facility and tell them you're going to pay. And then 14 days later, you tell them, you know what, you guys did not even obey the rules. You're going to stay for another 14 days and you're going to pay. You know, that entire mismanagement. Beyond that, there's the contact tracing. Somebody, through contact tracing, you're picked from your home and you're taken to a quarantine facility at your own cost. Mismanagement. Another one is how we are mismanaging the curfew and those who are disobeying the rules, taking them and also taking them into the same quarantine facilities. The entire quarantine management has just gone wrong. And that is what is really working against Governor Ali Hassan Joho.
That's what's working
This
against
man really, really wants to do his job well, but the National Emergency Response Committee has completely failed him. This is where the problem we are seeing in Mombasa. It's because, look, people are saying, if you're going to come and test me,
then you take me away.
then take me from my home in Mombasa, take me to a place, and then I'm going to pay for staying in that particular environment and coming back home here, 14,000 bob, 28,000 bob, poor. I'm not going to appear for testing. He's asking people come for mass testing. They will not go for mass testing. He's asking people, let's live a certain way. Everybody's thinking, come on, live a certain way. What way?
What way?
I will not work with you.
So
frustration is because national government has failed Joho.
And maybe a reminder to the national governments and even Joho himself, these rules and regulations and guidelines are made by human beings. They're not cast in stone. And ideally, and from what we've seen other countries do, is you modify as you go along the way. Whatever your data is telling you, whatever information you're gathering from your statistics, you modify according to that. So take, for example, Mombasa Old Town. You found that Old Town is a hotspot. You need to do A, B, C, and D.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt to modify the regulations and say either those who are positive will go for isolation, everyone else remain on quarantine, we will foot the bills and all of those things. It doesn't hurt to change and modify along the way.
Yeah.
Remember, this thing has been here for 4 months globally.
Yeah.
We do not know
We don't know much
exactly
about
what we are dealing with. So if your information tells you do this, you should be able to adapt and move to that particular direction because things are changing every day.
So what
for
you're saying
me,
is, for example, they should come up with a quarantine facility for the people in Old Town and say, if you test positive, we'll put you in here. We are going to foot the bill. We'll feed you. We'll do everything. We'll put you in this particular facility. If you're found to be positive, we'll take you into isolation at the Technical University of Mombasa. It'll be free of charge. Now, come out and get tested.
in fact, quarantine.
Or you can stay at home.
Yes, because quarantine, you've just been suspected. You stay at home. Isolation, I'm thinking of isolation for people who've tested positive because they may be having underlying, pre-existing conditions that needs close monitoring and, additional care. So those ones you probably want to have those people in isolation so that you can monitor people quite keenly. Now, in quarantine, it doesn't mean that people will now stay at home and just wait for 14 days. You have to have your public health officials, you have to have your community health volunteers, and this is where they come in handy to do the groundwork. Every morning, somebody has a location to go and,
a radius that they
cover.
radius
to cover. You go and take people's temperatures, check on them, see how people are doing. When there's that, there'll be a lot of feedback that you get from the population, from your constituents, that you're able to apply in the rest of the county should you need to. And the rest of the country can actually apply. So if I were Joho, and he has a very good health team behind him, that's why we see all of these things happening, I would institute that. Nothing stops the county government from instituting some of these things. Remember, health is a shared function. It is not a monopoly of the national government because we have a pandemic, and it's not a monopoly of the county government. If, and clearly from Joho's tone and demeanor, it's a threat to your county and to the sanity of your county, you are in a position to actually institute some of these measures. It will not hurt.
Work with the people.
Work with your people, because at the end of the day, let's say, for example, we have, God forbid, mass deaths in Old Town. Who will we look at? We look at Joho. We look at the county governor. So nothing stops him from instituting some of these things. I would just like them to change their approach, be humane, because here you're asking people to change their way of life. If we're used to having a whole senior and 10 of us sit down here, you want us to change that. You have to find a way of making me understand. And that's human behavior. People do not change overnight. You have to make people understand and see the alternatives of doing some of these things for you to achieve success. So he really has to pretend that the national...
That's a longer route, though.
There are no shortcuts in this case.
Let's just grant him the route that he's been wanting. Lock down the place. I have mobilized food. I will bring food. Stay indoors. This whole thing of coming to try and teach you how to unlearn things that you were born and you brought up this way. You're going to have communal meals in a senior.
I don't even think it's a matter of unlearning. I don't think it's a matter of unlearning.
We don't
I
have
think
the
it's
time
applying.
for that.
No. I think it's applying the brakes for a period of time, because COVID is not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Even if it is something that we live with seasonally, it is not something that is going to require you to extinguish your cultural or traditional practices for eternity. And I think that's where the communication needed to come. And if we had proper communication on a national level to begin with, I think then we would have been able to break down this communication easier than at the micro level. Unfortunately, and we've been talking about this for a very long time, unfortunately, and it could be because people were dancing around with the idea and didn't really know what was going on. But if that communication, because yes, we don't know everything that we need to know about this virus. Nobody does. But there are certain things that we do know. And I think it is the things that we do know that then gives us the power to inform. But unfortunately, we did not take that opportunity when it presented itself to inform people widely about what we did know and what we are asking people to change, not in permanency, but temporarily.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been able to change the way we are burying people.
That we've been able to change.
15 people within 48 hours, and it's happening.
Yeah. When did it started with 50 people. And then 3 weeks later, they said, hold on, no. It'll be 25 people. And then 2 weeks after that, there was again, no, it'll be 15 people. And you have 1 week to get your loved ones and bury them. And when you do that, it'll be 15 people. Nobody ever thought, because you would plan a burial for 2 weeks and bury the person in the end of the second week or the third week. In some other countries, months before you bury people.
Yeah.
People have had to change that instantly. So the ability of the human mind to adapt to a new concept is not rocket science.
It isn't.
But if you present them with the right information and you communicate it properly, people will adapt. But you see, this is a problem here. People think that quarantine is punishment. And in many cases, it is.
It is.
It is punishment. It doesn't make sense that you have 5 people who essentially have already quarantined themselves at home. And then you're going to take all of them, whereby they can eat. If it is sukuma wiki and ugali that they're eating in their house, you leave them alone. You take all of them and move them across the city and then charge them to stay at home to do the same thing that they would essentially be doing. You talked about being able to form ideas based on data, Dr. Career. And here we have, look at Germany, for example. Germany has the same number of cases that France does, with a quarter of the deaths that France does. What has Germany been able to do? They've told people to stay at home. We're not going to take you and put you in a space somewhere. If you present with these symptoms, stay at home. We know that people have pre-existing conditions. And in France, one of the greatest pre-existing conditions is respiratory illnesses because of the high levels of smoking, for example. So what have people done? They get a cough and everybody floods the hospitals. The hospitals then are overburdened. They're not able to take care of people. So what do you have? People start dying in huge numbers. What has Germany done? We understand that you have these pre-existing conditions. You may get tested positive for COVID, but what we're going to ask you to do is stay home. We're going to put a doctor on call. You talk to your doctor. They can prescribe certain things. What has happened? A quarter of the deaths in that country as compared to another country who's their neighbor who has the same number of cases. So it can happen. Here we can do it too. It's possible that we have people walking around in Nairobi with COVID. Many people. Just Nairobi as an example.
Yes, of course.
And are they dying?
No, they're not.
It's possible to have home protocols for quarantine. It's possible.
And they're there.
So then they need to be enforced.
They just need to be implemented.
The ministry has all these protocols.
It has.
Ministry has every protocol.
It has all these protocols. They have been done.
Only problem is those things that stay on some floor in Afya House and how they are communicated and translated to the ground. 16 minutes after 7, this is The Situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. Taking a look at the weather shortly.
Have changed. Okay, starting from Nairobi today, mostly cloudy conditions this Monday morning. We're going to see highs of 25. The chance of rain quite high for later in the afternoon. In Nyeri, it's mostly cloudy at 16 degrees. We'll see highs of 23 with thunderstorms in the afternoon. In Nakuru, right now, we're looking at partly cloudy conditions at 16 degrees. Thunderstorms expected for the afternoon with highs of 24. And in Eldoret, partly cloudy conditions at 14 degrees. It'll open up into clear skies, but then the rains are going to come in later. It's going to be cool, though, with highs of 22 and lows of 13. Looking into Kisumu, partly cloudy conditions at 21 degrees. The rain showers will be back, though, later with highs of 28 and lows of 20. It's still a rainy morning in Malindi, mostly cloudy through most parts. 27 degrees currently. We'll see highs of 30 and the rains will be back later as well with lows of 26. In Mombasa, partly cloudy conditions, mostly cloudy conditions, and the rains are going to come in early as well with highs of 30 and lows of 26. Dar es Salaam at 25 degrees is partly cloudy this morning, highs of 31 and lows of 24. Then looking into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 20. We'll see showers though early, highs of 26 and lows of 19. Taking a look then into Johannesburg, it's clear skies this morning at 10 degrees. Sunny conditions through the entire day with highs of 22 and lows of 8. It'll be cool there later. Highs of 20 or 32 is what will be experienced in Lagos today. Currently clear skies and the low of 25.
Spice up your life.
That's what measures have been put in place by
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Also the frustrations of the national government. For instance, measures have been put in place.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Rashid Ahmad was speaking yesterday and he was saying, come on, we had a target of how many people in Isli? 2,000 people targeted in Kawangware in the last 2 days. Only 803 have presented. Mm-hmm. Only 803 have come up for this free, voluntary mass testing.
I'm not surprised.
Against a target of 2,000 people. First of all, let's even start from, are people aware that there's mass testing going on? Mm-hmm. From the very beginning. We are assuming that because this thing has been put up in this center, everybody in Kawangware knows. Maybe not everybody in Kawangware knows. Maybe not everybody in Kawangware knows that you go there and it's free. You're not supposed to pay. Mm. And not everybody knows. So what happens if I test positive? If that communication is not happening within Kawangware, how do you expect 2,000 people to turn up? They will not. In Isli, they have a target of 3,000. Only 494 have shown up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they feel they're going to get arrested. Mm. Which is what it is.
I'm not shocked by those numbers myself.
Neither am I.
I'm
actually surprised that there were that many.
Especially in Kawangware, so almost half of the target showed up. I'm surprised. I remember that for Kenyans and I think almost everyone else, your social media spaces, your Facebooks, Twitters, and WhatsApp spaces is where you get a lot of information.
Yep.
So if the information that you get in those spaces is about people being hounded off to isolation units, bills of 42,000 for, testing positive and being quarantined or put in isolation, that is the first point of information that people, if that is the first point of information for people, then even if they know there's mass testing, the day they know you're on the ground, nobody will leave their house.
Yep. They will not come.
Until after you leave is when now they'll be out to do their own things. And then, remember, this is a small community. When you've gone to Isili, Kawangware, you've narrowed it down.
Yeah.
Information spreads very fast. I'll ask Ndu, so what happened? If she doesn't tell me
You'll not
something
even ask
positive,
and do what happened. You'll just hear so and so has not come back home. Why? They tested
that's
positive.
it.
They've been taken away.
Finish.
But
that's it.
And then you want me to come and volunteer myself. I come there tomorrow.
to
so that in
Saidianeni,
case something happens.
we help feed the children because the parents have gone into isolation. Or into quarantine.
Forget about it, man.
First of all, nobody will want to come near those children because they'll be like, if the parents tested positive, how sure are we that these children are? So the whole process, as you outlined, from how we managed quarantine, our communication, and all of these things, is just working against us. So I will not be surprised if our numbers, our confirmed numbers, go higher. And I say confirmed because you can only tabulate the ones you've confirmed. There could be very many other people who are symptomatic out here that we don't know.
This is the thing. And you say that the Ministry of Health then has a daunting task countrywide then to offer this mass testing? Absolutely. Because it's going to take them a pretty moment and probably a pretty penny to convince people to come out and get tested. And unfortunately, this is because of what has happened before. It's not a matter of Kenyans are indisciplined or Kenyans don't understand the responsibility. In this case, no. It is the message that has been sent to them quite glaringly so before that, you know what, if we do, it's like, you've done something wrong by being tested, by being found positive. You've done something wrong, and here we are going to take you to one place. Or even if we suspect, then it's like we're charging you, and you have to pay money that you don't have. So this one, unfortunately, that they're going to have a hard time for people to come out and test for COVID-19, this one is their own doing. Because the messaging was not clear, the protocols
even
were not
now,
followed,
I suspect this messaging
now,
is not it's not clear.
The messaging is not happening.
People in Kawangware do not know what's happening.
No.
So they see, you pass by somewhere and you see guys wearing these things in a tent somewhere and they're testing it. Wale ni watu wa COVID. And you know what you've heard. People who test positive for COVID are going elsewhere. People who are in that same household with somebody who has tested for COVID, you're going, you will take off. People are moving out of Kawangware, probably into other areas for a while. Paka wale watu wa COVID waende.
I would also do the same. If you have a relative on this other side of
town,
town.
I go stay with my sister.
I mean, it's still within the metropolis.
Yes.
You go and stay there.
Take a matatu, go and stay there. Watu wa COVID wahame.
You'll come back this home. Other side.
Management and mismanagement of information.
This
processes.
One is 100% their fault. Management of information, management of people, management of processes. Those are things we say, yes, it's unfolding and every day is yielding us different ideas or different things. But this one, they knew what could have been done. They knew what they could have instituted. There's a policy document, for crying out loud. They have the document. They wrote it. They know what they could follow. So what do you expect to happen when that is the message you send out? Whereby a totally different message could have been crafted, right? People could have understood this thing. More than that, you could then have allowed people to, it would be easier for the few, and I'm saying few because you're dealing with a mass population who you want to have tested. And you have a few people then who can implement these processes where people actually stay at home. It's easier for the few to go to the many than the many to come to the few. And the same message could have been passed. You would have had people staying at home the same way they did the census, where they went to people's homes. You could do the same thing. If you want to say, we'll come and test you, but we ask that you stay at home for home protocol, you do testing in people's homes. If this is what we're talking about now, that it could be free, why can't you have these health workers that we talk about who would be volunteers using a government national machinery to then go to people's homes one by one, right? Test, and we say, this is what we found, but we ask you then to stay at home and maintain the home protocol. It can be done, for crying out loud. It's not rocket science. And like I always say, even rocket science, somebody studied the exam and passed.
Rocket science is something that exists.
It exists.
People excel in rocket science. This is about our education system, by the way. If you just think back and look at how we do things, you know that rote learning. We do things for the exam.
Yeah.
This is the same thing we've done. All these protocols that you're talking about, the Ministry of Health has them. It has a protocol for everything, for quarantine, for isolation, for testing, for mass testing, for communication, according to WHO standards. In terms of passing an exam for WHO, we are right up there. A students.
Distinction.
We're distinction. We have it because we've got all the books. But applying it, absolute zero. Our education system. This is how we learn. We learn for the exam. We don't learn to practice. It's showing itself here. We have all these protocols, but we can't. How are you talking about? So you've decided we have seen that there's a hotspot in a place called Kangore where case number 36 has led to case number 42 and case number 47 and case number whatever. So what do? We go into mass testing, targeted mass testing. We shall make it free of charge. Okay? We go into the ground. It's free of charge. Communication to the people who are concerned, zero. Information about how we shall handle the people that we find positive, the people that we shall find that have been in contact with the people who turn out positive, zero. It takes so long for the government to react to something that they see is going wrong. It took so long for them to realize that what they were doing in the quarantine facilities was wrong. It has taken them so long. Yesterday is when CAS Rashid Aman announced that people who flout regulations are not going to be taken to the same quarantine facilities as everybody else. Now, he's saying that they'll be taken into another detention facility provided by the National Police Service. How many weeks down the road? And these are words from Rashid Aman yesterday. Of course, today, people will still be taken to KMTC.
I still maintain that our government or our governments, national and county, found themselves in a situation where you should not just do protocols for the sake of doing protocols, have guidelines for the sake of having guidelines. They found themselves in a situation where you have to actually implement those things you write, and they're not used to it. It is foreign to them.
County governments have CIDPs, that's County Integration Development Plans, 5-year, 10-year, plans. Zero implementation. The national government has policies. We have all these food and nutrition policy, whatever policy, implementation, absolute zero. We set aside money, budget for, because, in this financial year, this is what we are going to do across the country. Implementation of it, zero. Now, here we are. We are dealing with the COVID-19. Come up with tengeneza hiyo kitu.
They're all there.
It's there. We have a protocol for this. We have a protocol for the other, according to WHO guidelines and standards. Implementation.
So I look at the ministry's own data, for example. 71% of our cases are asymptomatic. It means it's somebody like you and I. 71%. That is 3 out of every 4
people without a cough, people without a fever.
Zero.
This is
people
the
who are
thing.
fine.
Zero. So you have this information with you, and you still admit people in isolation units. And remember, as you say, each one of these protocols, you have to, I still can't find the word, but you have customized them according, finally. You have to customize according to the situation. Kenyans are used to, when you are sick and you go to hospital, there's a drip, there's an injection, there's medicine, there are tests, you either go to the lab.
You're unwell.
There's something that is happening.
Yeah.
Then here is a situation where you're taking somebody who is otherwise well, except the fact that you have found a virus in his nose, and you've put them, and now that you have COVID, stay here. Those two things don't click.
And you're telling them to pay.
And they're just eating, sleeping, doing nothing. They're confined in a small space like this one. And then you're telling them they're sick. Those two things will not tally. The easiest thing would have been to have a way of having this 71% of people stay home. And people would understand better, and I would dare say this, if you know that we have found you with the virus, but because we do not want you to spread to everyone, we want you to stay in your house. Yep. Because we do not want you to go to hospital, because hospital we are reserving for people who are critically sick or people who have symptoms or people who need treatment. That would make sense to somebody who's been found to have the virus.
How will this money have been spent, though? If you don't take people into quarantine, how are you going to justify spending money on PPEs, spending money on this?
But you see, actually, you've mentioned PPE and you have
touched a raw nerve.
Yes. So
let's come out.
No, I will not expound it. I will not expound it. We have spent some handsome millions on PPEs, but healthcare workers still do not have PPEs.
So who's wearing them?
So where are they?
Who is wearing the PPEs?
Here they are. There's a very big photo here of people wearing PPEs
Who are they?
in Isli, waiting to test people for COVID-19.
As I said, I shall not expound.
Wow.
7:30, this is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. So you've decided to get back on the roads, right? All right, so let's tell you where the traffic is. Good morning.
Well, it's on Mombasa Road right now between the Cabanas and General Motors. Right after General Motors, though, it gets much better. It's also right around the Pangani underpass heading into the city centre, and then as you approach the Globe Cinema roundabout. But apart from that, it's not so bad. Getting into the CBD, however, it's gonna take some time. Uhuru Highway coming off of Mombasa Road and Uhuru Highway coming out of Westlands also. We seem to have some issues there. The question is, though, where are people going? It is Monday, so right around the roadblocks, people are trying to come back into the city and are complaining that they can't. The question is, how did you get out? Trying to come in from Machakos and trying to come in from Thika Road, asking the question, why is it taking so long? You shouldn't have been out in the first place. Spice of MKE, tell us what else you see.
Let's go to the phone line 0719-012-600. That's how you can join this
Spice up your
conversation.
life.
You can also join our conversation via Facebook, Spice FM KE on Facebook, Spice FM KE Twitter, Instagram.
Mature,
Live
intelligent talk
stream as well.
every morning.
Spice FM
Spice
KE.
up yourself.
Hello, Kennedy.
Oh, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Mornings.
Very good morning.
Good morning to you. Where are you calling us from this morning, Kennedy?
I'm calling you from Westlands, Nairobi, here around the ABC place.
Right.
How are you, Ndu?
I'm fine, thank you.
How are you, Marcy?
I'm very well, thank you, Kennedy. Good morning.
Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Yes, Kennedy, join the conversation. What do you have to say this morning?
Man, I'm actually surprised concerning the way the government is completely handling the entire situation of COVID-19. You know, from the word go, they started making a mistake from day one. I'm very confident to say this because, truly speaking, I'm really disgusted and pissed off. And I think you can attest it to the contributions I've made on social media, Kennedy Orinda, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can you actually just sit on 40 billion shillings and ask people to actually just take care of their own costs, starting from quarantine centers to, traveling from China. Every single thing that actually just trying to add is just to tell Kenyans that we can take care of our own costs. And, you know, these monies that they have is not there. You know, the government is actually acting as if they're doing us a favor. They are forgetting, like you said sometimes earlier in your discussions, that we have the ones who have employed them and they just need to heed to our instructions and do what we want, not what they feel they want. You know, they are behaving like they have all the powers, they own everything. They're just trying to dish out is a favor from them. We have employed these guys. They are forgetting this narrative.
Yeah.
So it is a plain question that these guys have completely ran out of idea. And truly speaking, they just need to be told. And I thank you guys for just pressing this kind of powerful instructions every single time in your discussions. I love Spice because you guys have a very authentic talks.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Kennedy.
you, Kennedy.
Have a good day.
Just to open up their ears and truly listen, because truly speaking, they have actually scared every single individual away from nearing close to where they are, because you fear the emerging information that are just coming from the quarantine centers, the things that are just taking place.
Well, guess what, Kennedy? I hate to interrupt you, but the government spokesman is listening, And he's called in. He'd like to contribute. Just stay on the line, or you can go back to the radio and listen to him. Colonel Cyrus Aguna, good morning.
My brother Eric Latif, how are you?
I am fine, thank you, Colonel. How are you doing?
Very well. Been following your discussion this morning.
Right.
And I must say that, yes, really you are educating Kenyans, which is a good thing. But also, I also, hold the view that some of the information that are given to Kenyans may not be very accurate.
Okay.
And one of the things perhaps I'd wish to weigh in on is about the issue of what Masekori did mention a short while ago, that the best way to address this issue would have been to let people go and be self-quarantined at home. So that people can be encouraged to go for testing, but also after being tested, then they can go back home, because then if they're taken to these quarantine facilities, then they are going to be forced to pay.
Yes.
And for that reason, therefore, most people are actually staying away from going to be tested. But I also want to say this: if you look at the way this thing has progressed, initially what the government, did encourage at the very beginning was self-quarantine. That people to be quarantined at home.
Yes.
But then what it turned out to be was that, people were not necessarily disciplined enough to be self-quarantined at home. And therefore, for the few who might have been infected at the time, they became a big risk to the rest of the population. And therefore, the idea of being quarantined now in a government facility, had to be introduced to protect, the public. So even now, as Dr. Mercy is saying, is that if the government were to allow people to go back and be self-quarantined at home, which would be a very cheap thing to do, but without that discipline, the level of infections in this country will really soar so badly, and therefore you can understand why the government is insisting that those who have been found to be positive must be isolated in a government facility.
But how sustainable is this going to be, Colonel? Look, if we talk about talking about the people who turn out positive to be isolated in a government facility, and all their contacts to be...
It may not be sustained if you look at it that way, but increasingly people are getting to be informed about the importance of,
isolation,
having the very high level of discipline, because countries that we have been, seeing and getting information from there in as far as the development of this disease is concerned, most of them are actually do self-quarantine at home.
Yes.
But there's a high level of discipline that is required. And indeed, we also appreciate...
There's also, Colonel, there's also high level of government involvement in managing that isolation and quarantine.
And I have to weigh in here, Colonel Aguna. There's also a high level of clear messaging coming from the government from the get-go. And there's no mixing of messages when it comes to what people ought to do. And that has not changed. And I'm going to give you an example, Colonel, when you talk about countries that have been able to do this. Look at Rwanda, for example. From the beginning, what they've said till now has not changed. If you ask Rwandese, what they're being told today, the 4th of May, is what they were told from before the first case was found. It hasn't changed. If we talk about self-quarantine that is being asked for Kenya, for example, when it changed, then it became a punitive measure. You will then be all rounded up, and then you'll be taken and forced to pay. I'm telling you what, Colonel, I understand what you're saying.
That may be what people think,
but I'm telling you what Kenyans are saying.
The intention may not be punitive.
The intention may not be punitive,
but the end
result is. And the messaging that people are getting is that if I'm found, Colonel, I'm sorry, but this is what people. I'm telling. Maybe this will help you, Colonel. Maybe this will help.
Yes.
Because you must also understand that when you're passing this information in terms of communication, how it is received on the other end, until and unless it is received, then it is not communication. The message cannot be clear until people understand what it is.
You, Madam Ondo, how is it punitive? Because the aspect of perception and the aspect of what is real. We are aware that there are many Kenyans who might not have been able to, meet the cost of quarantine, and the government has stepped in and defrayed those bills. So, but there are those who are able to pay. But moving forward, those that have been brought in because of from contact tracing activity, most of them the government have been able to pay. However, those who came in initially, when we suspended international flights, they were informed that they're coming and they'll be quarantined at their own cost. They knew, and they were given options, either government facility or private facility. Those who chose private facility were taken to private facilities. Those who opted for government-owned facilities were taken to those. Even those that were taken to government-owned facilities, majority of them were unable to pay, and the government was able to take up those bills and pay them.
But here, Colonel, we are talking about after one has been diagnosed and confirmed to have the coronavirus, and the isolation is at government facilities. And from your own data, 71% of Kenyans do not have any symptoms. They are basically asymptomatic. And I'd like to bring to your attention the TB program, where we have the directly observed treatment, where a community health volunteer actually goes house to house to just make sure that the TB treatment is followed. And these people ideally should be in an isolation because of how TB is highly contagious. And even your own government data says about 60% of Kenyans or people with TB, 60% of people with TB are actually walking around undiagnosed. But when they are diagnosed, they are not put in a facility for the 6 months or 1 year in which they are on treatment. They would be at home. There will be somebody who will be there to make sure that they are eating well, they are taking their medications well, somebody is checking on them, how they are doing, and if any of the other contacts in the household are developing any symptoms, so that action could be taken very fast. And this is a highly contagious disease that we've had it for long. Now here we have COVID, equally contagious. People are asymptomatic. Why not apply the same model, the same principle,
using
because
the
you have
structures.
Thousands of community health volunteers to do the same thing? Wouldn't that be cheaper and just incorporating the same thing into the same health system that we have?
Yes, but look at it this way. The understanding that people have about TB is a bit different as of now compared to COVID-19. As more and more begin to understand, more and more begin to get disciplined about it, that is the way to go, that most people would have to be managed from home. But as it is now, the understanding is a bit low, and therefore, when the government, suggests that people will do self-quarantine, majority of the people just be moving around, you see. So as we move forward, and people get to be armed with information, people get more aware, certainly the idea of self-quarantine at home will be, the preferred mode of dealing with this, because it will not be possible to have all of them in hospital facilities, because they'll be overwhelmed, right? But as it is now, that level of understanding is a bit low, right? And therefore, what Masiko is suggesting as of now may be practical, but as we move forward. But as now, really, because of what we have seen happening in some of our, communes, it is something that we must still work on. But the government cannot be blamed, and as with people full aware that this is a new disease, the information has been a bit scanty, and if we was to start really, insisting that people must self-quarantine home, our curve would be completely different as of now.
Colonel, wouldn't this be the right time to start home-based care when your numbers are still low? If you look at 71% of people who are asymptomatic, those are just 300, and some actually have been discharged because they've tested negative. Shouldn't this be the time to start that home-based care, because you have fewer numbers to monitor, such that should the numbers go higher than that and the areas are more, then you would have sort of piloted home-based care, and you would know where the weaknesses are, what gaps you need to fill, and so scaling it up would be much easier if the numbers go higher. Shouldn't this be the time to pilot home-based care when the numbers are still low and manageable, and even the people who are symptomatic are not critically ill? So still, those people can still be managed at home.
It's also kind of the best time it's also the best time for education, Colonel.
Yes, we're actually carrying out and scaling up education, and as far as this issue is concerned. But indeed, there have been those that have been actually led to go and self-quarantine at home. That has happened. But there's a lot of assessment that is being undertaken to determine, can he really quarantine at home? For instance, if you have a spare room that you can be able to use to self-quarantine yourself, you certainly will be let to go and looking at how you are able to explain yourself that you will be able to self-quarantine.
Sorry, Colonel, I have to ask you. So are you saying now that if somebody comes, from what you're saying now, which is what is an accepted protocol in the country, if I am able to explain myself and give my living conditions, that I have a spare room where I can quarantine myself to health officers around the country, they will actually allow me go back home and self-quarantine and there will be no problem?
They will assess. It will not just you explain yourself, but they'll assess.
So they'll come and assess and see whether it's practical.
And assess, yes. And I'm saying this because I know that there have been 1 or 2, 3 cases that have been allowed to self-quarantine at home, and it has worked, and they are now negative.
How come this information is not universal and open everywhere so that people know that there is that possibility?
It sounds like, this thing is favoring the rich.
There's a big disparity there, Colonel.
Remember, again, Latif, we must also be realistic over socioeconomic, realities in our country.
Yep.
If you look at perhaps, where this, disease, apparently it's turning to be the epicenter, some of our people may not necessarily, be able to have a spare room. You understand?
Yes.
And in order to be able to, to curtail, even to, to block the chain of infection, then you must be able to isolate that, household, that home, so that it doesn't spread. And to be able to isolate them, then that such individuals must be taken out and be a quarantine in a government-owned facility to protect the rest of the community.
I hear you, and I really appreciate what you're saying, Colonel, this morning. But also, let me take you back to the example that Dr. Mercy Korir is giving. TB, highly contagious disease. People who test positive for TB are put under medication, but they are treating at home with other people in the same household.
Yeah, but
what is happening is that we use the healthcare workers and the community health volunteers to come and help manage the situation. Are you telling me that it's not possible for us to do the same thing with this COVID-19?
It will happen that way, but not as of now because of the information that people still have in as far as this. Remember, TB has been here for how many years? So a lot more people now understand about TB. But this COVID is a new thing. Not many people, and just like Master Korir was saying at some point, that there are those who may have the virus, but they don't feel unwell. They don't have any symptoms. They are wondering what is happening to them. Such individuals, if they are led to be at home with such kind of attitude, they'll just go out and begin to spread it to others, and they will be spreading to older people. People may have other underlying conditions, and what will happen to them?
Allow me to fault the government here, because the government is assuming that our level of taking on information and comprehension is low and different with different circumstances.
What you're saying, Latif, is not that the level is low, but this is a new disease, and
it's
therefore
true.
The understanding of it is still not necessarily as deep as TB and the others that have been around for quite some time.
It's true. But also, you see, you're saying that because of our level of understanding, we cannot institute some measures. What is happening?
Just the wrong word, but it's not the level of understanding. Perhaps the information that is still coming out.
The amount of information that we have.
Yes.
What is happening, however, is because of the kind of information that we currently have and the way the government is handling the situation, we are getting the wrong information coming to the people. Now the wrong information has come in, and on your daily briefings, Colonel, now you're starting to talk about stigmatization. It's a concern that is emerging. You're also talking about...
Really, but you see, even HIV, when it started, people were stigmatized. But today, HIV is everybody is comfortable with it. So look at it this way. This is a new disease, Eric, and Mercy Korir is well aware about this. If you compare the two, in the early days when HIV, came to be known, people were really stigmatized. Some of them died at home. You understand?
Yep.
So now, we cannot compare the two because this is equally a new disease. With time, people get to know about it much more. People will be more comfortable with it, and it will be part of our everyday lifestyle, just like HIV is today. You understand? So let's not compare the two because we are comparing two different situations.
Apples and oranges.
But Colonel, here we're not really comparing the diseases, but the public health interventions and public health principles and guidelines to follow. And they are more or less the same. You just You just
customize
to fit the situation that you're currently facing. And
but
for
Dr.
COVID,
Masi, I agree with you. My only problem is that this other one, the path that it has worked is a bit longer. This other one is just beginning. Its continuum is still very, very short. So with time, it will be able to get there. But we cannot use interventions that have been used for a certain kind of disease that has been around for quite a while, and then try to superimpose the same on one that is still in its very infancy stages. People don't know much about it.
Okay, let's look at the risks. The risk of the current interventions, the current communication, and the current management of COVID-19. Number one, because of how the government has used quarantine as a place to take everybody who has come into contact with somebody who has tested positive, the mindset of the people is, if somebody tests positive and I know that they've tested positive, I'm going to be picked up, taken to a facility. And the communication from the government has never been that the government shall foot the bill. It has always been at your own cost. We are hearing for the first time from you that there are people who end up getting their bills footed. It has never come out that the government has footed the bill. So number one. Number two, the issue of when an entire household is picked up from their home and taken into a quarantine facility and they're told they're going to pay and they stay there for 14 days, when they come back into the community, the issue of the reintegration into the community and the stigmatization that follows. Even people who are coming from isolation, having been treated and getting back home, it's an issue that also the government is raising now, the stigmatization with the reintegration. That means that there is a breakdown in communication somewhere on what this disease is and how we deal with it.
It's not a breakdown in communication. Remember, communication is a learning process. Attitude change is a learning process. This is a question of attitude change toward a certain disease. And like I've just said, even if you look back at how HIV, was being handled in the early days, it was the same thing. But that was because people did not understand more about it.
And we should now be applying the lessons that we learned from dealing with such a pandemic
we
before.
are upscaling every day. Information is coming out, and I trust and believe that at a given time, people will have learned a lot more about this COVID-19, and the idea of stigmatization will not be there. Right now, people, are stigmatized not necessarily because this is a deadly disease, but perhaps because of limited understanding about this disease. If you really see how people sometimes, disobey or disabuse government, directive, it's not necessarily because, they don't understand them, but because they actually think that this is not a serious disease.
It's either that or they don't trust what is coming from the government. Unfortunately, Colonel Guna, we have to take that into consideration. Unfortunately. And this is the thing about communication, that once it's coming from a source that can be trusted, then you're likely to follow what it is that can be said. The same government talks about one thing and then in another breath says, well, we need to have you in a place and we're going to charge you for it. And honestly, Colonel Laguna, I'm telling you what the situation is. I'm telling you what the situation is on the ground. People understand that this disease is a deadly one. However, people also understand that they will be removed from their homes and put into quarantine or isolation, for example, and they will be asked to pay with money that they do not have. And I'm telling you, in terms of messaging, that is one thing that is coming clear from Kenyans. Now, if there is something that can be done, to change that perception, look at what we see in Kawangware. Look at what we see in Isili. You're looking for 3,000 and 2,000. How can you explain why people are not coming out to get tested?
But you see, my sister Ondo, why are people not putting on masks? Yet they all know that they're supposed to help in terms of one getting infected or even infecting another person. Why are they not putting on masks, especially young people? Why? That's nothing to do with footing the bill at the quarantine facilities. Completely. Why are border still carrying more than 3-4 people on their motorbikes?
4 people? Wow. Okay.
Still overloading. It is not because of quarantine cost. It is because majority of the people look that this is not a very serious one, especially for young people. You understand?
Yes.
So that's where we must be able to target. And I'm asking you to be able to tell these young brothers and sisters, this disease affects everyone. And even though majority of those that have recovered are young people, But you also know that there's some young people that have succumbed.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
therefore, it is important that we treat this disease as a serious disease, and any directive that have been issued by the government should be followed for the benefit of themselves.
On that, we are in agreement.
100%.
On that, we are in agreement.
100% agreement.
Let's also be in agreement when we are giving you feedback on what the government is doing. Let's, for example, look at what's happening now with the targeted mass testing in Isli and in Kawangware.
Yes.
At yesterday's briefing, Dr. Rashid Aman, the CAS, was raising concern about what's happening. 2,000 was the target in Kawangware, 800 presented themselves. In Isli, 3,000 is the target, less than 500 people have gone for testing. Why do you think this is happening?
It goes back to what you've been saying, and we, as a government, you understand that, perhaps it is our communication that did not go out at the time, in a more, effective manner that would be able to convince these young people in Kawangware and Isili to come out for testing. Perhaps the channel we used was not the right channel. What we should have done, maybe to use community leaders with the ones who are leading, in communicating to the people, so that they are able to come out based on having been, informed about the same by their community leaders. And that is the direction that we are taking right now. And we trust that moving forward, there are a lot more people who will be coming out for testing.
When you talk about community leaders, who are we referring to specifically?
Of course, every region has got Bakumi leaders. They have got their, religious leaders. They have got, political leaders. All those are leaders, all right? Only that they don't have to go and gather somewhere and call a rally.
Yeah.
But they can talk to them through radio. They can talk to them on television. They can talk to them through social media and stuff like that.
So do we know like the number of people that we are targeting to use as community leaders or influencers in Kawangware, for example?
We have a plan like that. We have a plan. We have that plan that we rolled out, and certainly you're going to see a lot more, aggression as far as that area is concerned, and certainly you're going to see a lot more people turning up.
When do we expect to see this particularly coming into place?
Yes, as soon as possible.
This testing started last week. We are in Monday, we're into a new week.
Maybe you've not been following that there are many people who have been coming out to try and inform the public to come out for testing. It's good for them. It's good for everyone. Like, Rashid did mention yesterday and the day before that there are countries where people actually beg to be tested.
Yes, there are countries like that. Now,
there are countries who beg to be tested.
Let's go back to Kawangware.
People are being begged to be tested.
Kano, let's go back to Kawangware. So testing started last week. How many people, do you know how many people are actually in charge of spreading information, this communication?
In Kawangware,
yes.
There are many people. In fact, even we, not just individuals, but also we had a complete campaign the day before yesterday on Friday and Saturday. We had a campaign that, we had people with loudspeakers informing people to come out for testing, that is a good thing for them, all right? And there are also community leaders who have been doing that, Bakumi leaders, who have been doing that in almost every 10 housing units. That has been going on in Kawangware and Isili as well, and other parts of the country as well, because this targeted testing is not just for Kawangware and Isili alone, right? And not just from Vita and KP alone, right? But those are among the high-risk areas that have been identified that we must be had at our priority areas, and thereafter is going to be scaled to other areas as well. But again, I must also say here that you're talking about targeted testing, that not every Kenyan will have to be tested. Because I think there might be some kind of belief that everyone must be tested, not necessarily. But when we are able to identify those epicenters of infection in various communes, and they are isolated and everybody tested there, and those who are negative are let to go, those who are positive are treated and let go to reintegrate back to the community, we will certainly be able to flatten our curve in a short time.
So with the target of 2,000 in Kawangware, the target of 2,000 was within a couple of days, or is it the total target?
The targeted of 2,000 was every day.
2,000 per day?
2,000 per day.
Okay. And here you want to test everybody who lives in Kawangware.
Let me explain, Eric.
Yeah.
We know our people, and this is not something that's quite unique. You remember even during elections, when we are getting our ID card and any other program,
Census.
People normally come for the last day.
Yes.
So this is not something that was really unique, but certainly it is important that we keep on ramping up our communication so that people can come in as early as possible, so that those who may be infected do not pass it on to others.
Okay. Still on targeted testing, Colonel, have we been able to test all healthcare workers? Because initially, after the cohort in quarantine facilities was done, the next group was healthcare workers. Have we been able to test?
They're being tested, Dr. Kumasi Korima, not just in Nairobi. The testing for our healthcare workers is going on across the country. And as soon as that one is done, complete, done and dusted, then certainly be able to communicate the same. But the testing is ongoing.
What percentage of healthcare workers have we been able to
test? I may not
test?
have the statistics with me as of now, but if you allow me, then perhaps at the end of the day, I'll be able to give you that.
Okay.
Colonel Laguna, one last question, and I know you've been gracious giving us your time this morning. So if somebody in Kawangware listening right now, for example, in terms of what you want to do, when it comes to testing and the fears around it, and that when somebody tests positive, certain things will happen, what would you, from a government perspective, be able to say to that individual today, right now?
If somebody tests positive, certainly he will be isolated. Quarantine. He'll be taken to a quarantine facility. But all his contacts, he will have to tell, the team about all the contacts that he had. And we're asking this should be voluntary, very, very, should be given out willingly, because then it protects the other members of the community, the other, and even family members of those that are his or her contacts. But when he comes to a government quarantine facility, depending on his status, and I'm saying status here because the idea of the government footing the bill has been based on case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is where the question is heading to. It is case-by-case basis. And indeed, there are those who have been able to pay, and there are those that have not been able to pay. So on the basis of that assessment, certainly the government will be able to determine whether, it will be paying, it will be footing the bill for this person from Kawangware, because everybody in Kawangware, people are from different socioeconomic class, even in Kawangware.
True.
So it is not right to assume that, it is a generalized kind of status there. That there are different classes in Kawangware.
Yes.
So that assessment will be made, and then people will be informed appropriately. Nonetheless, moving forward, NAC is actually reviewing all that, all right? And that review is based on feedback that we, the government, has also been able to receive. So a more detailed communication with regard to that is going to be issued.
Okay, because I was going to ask if this disparity should really be happening now that we are dealing with a pandemic, a global pandemic, where we are doing a case-by-case analysis to see, can you pay, can you not pay? Shouldn't it be across board where the government foots the bill because of the likely consequences of not being able to test and isolate?
And that's what I'm saying, that the whole policy issue is being reviewed, and more detailed information explanation will be provided. Perhaps maybe tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much, Colonel Cyrus Aguna, for calling us this morning and offering this information. Just as we let you go, just to head back, we have now this targeted mass testing that's happening in Isli and Kawangware. And from what I hear you say is that you have community leaders and a lot of opinion shapers in the community who are going door to door and trying to get as many people out to come and get tested as possible. Number one.
Hello.
So you're using very many community leaders to try and get as many people to come out and get tested as possible.
We are using community leaders, especially in Bakumi, to ask the community of the people in those communes to come out to be tested. And this is good for not only that community within those regions, but also for the rest of the country as well. Right.
Which is a very good thing. And then also you're saying that if somebody tests positive, you will take them into isolation to receive treatment, and then they'll come back into the community once they test.
Isolation to receive treatment, just like Mercy would be able to perhaps attest that not everybody receives treatment. Some of them just need to be removed away from the rest of the community because, again, people respond to this disease differently.
Yes.
There are those who will perhaps be ravaged very quickly and those who may never show any symptoms at all.
Okay.
So there are those that will be taken, but being removed from the rest of the community so that, they're isolated, and some of them have recovered even without any treatment at all. But the whole idea is because you don't know what would happen if that person infects somebody else, how that disease or that virus may be able to manifest in somebody else.
Thank you.
You don't want to to do that.
Thank you. That point is home. The final point that I want to get completely home is that the government will be able to assess every person's individual capacity to foot the bill.
What I'm saying is that the issue is not every person's capacity to foot the bill, but the whole policy of people paying, when they go to quarantine is going to be reviewed, and then more detailed information will be provided.
Okay. Colonel Cyrus Aguna, government spokesman, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel.
Keep it right here. Keep listening to
Sana, thank you
Kenya's
so much.
biggest conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
7 minutes after 8. Let's go back now into today's proverb. What was today's proverb? I told you it's from which country? John?
Ghana. And the crocodiles
at the dry river.
All right. So when the river dries up, we shall all see where the crocodile sleeps. That's a Ghanaian proverb. 7 minutes after 8. Let's take a look at traffic.
102.5 Spice FM.
All right, looking better in most parts right now. We still have the issue right on Mombasa Road, but that is likely to clear up in a very short while. Getting into the city centre, not much of a headache right now. Thika Road also is looking quite smooth. We have a bit of an accident. A serious one right around Thika Road there. But that'll clear up in just a little while because emergency services are already in the area. The city is back to normal, guys. There's traffic along Jogo Road and it's moving, but hustle mode has officially been activated. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit, but it seems that nobody is wanting to stay home. Spice of MKE, let's know what you see and we'll spread the word.
Traffic. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert,
Kenya's biggest conversation. So the government has issued some clarifications on some issues. Some are clear clarifications. Some we still have to wait for what happens next. For example, he's saying that there's a review of the policy on who foots the bill at the isolation centers. But at present, there are people who are able to pay and there are those who are not able to pay. And I feel even those who end up paying, it's not necessarily because they are able to pay. It may be just because, well, they really suffered and, they went through something, one or the other.
This is a pandemic. I mean, everyone is struggling. And if you look at it, we have suffered pay cuts. People have suffered job losses. People are no longer working. On KTN News right now, you're seeing the wedding industry, and we were talking about it yesterday with some colleagues, that what are they eating? The people who organize events.
The entertainment and events industry is all closed down. So
if somebody there contracts the virus because they need to look for food, and then you have put them in isolation and you slap them with a bill, how are they going to foot that bill? They may, from a socio-economic status review, they may look like they are able to foot the bill. But the true state of affairs now is that people are not able to even meet their daily demands.
Yeah, you leave a huge dent. We spoke to a gentleman called John last week. He's at KU teaching a referral. He has been discharged after having tested negative now. But his bill was at 88,000 shillings. And this guy is saying, I came from Dubai, I had lost a job. The only luck I had is that my employer paid for my flight to come to Nairobi. I was taken to quarantine, 7 days, tested positive, brought to KU. My bill so far is 88,000 shillings. And I've been sitting here. It's still accumulating. I'm not able to pay. I'm not able to raise this money. So as the government is talking about, evaluating whether you're able to pay,
by case
they're trying to push you as far as possible to see huyu atalipa.
Which should not be the case, really. And this is a government facility. It is run by our taxes. Before COVID, some of our taxes was going there to run that facility. Even now, from the document that was tabled in Parliament, a good amount of money is going to the government facilities just for human resource and for all the other things. Then why are you charging Kenyans?
Let's wait and see. Let's give Colonel Oguna the benefit of the doubt. He says that the National Emergency Response Committee is reviewing this policy. Let's wait to see what the government comes up with.
Yep, and I hope this review then, if at the very least, should come out and say in government quarantine and isolation facilities, we will foot that bill.
Yes.
Because then everyone, whether you can even go to a private hospital or not, you would opt to go to a government facility because it's free.
And even if it's a cost sharing, highly subsidized, cost sharing has always worked in this country. Even at some point, we may say that we have 100,000 cases, and all of these cases require to be taken into isolation, and the government therefore may not be able to foot the bill. Even if we get to a point where we say cost sharing, it shall be at 90-10%.
From that government document, we are repurposing funds. We've seen government is in talks with Gavi. They're in talks with the Global Fund, development projects. There's a lot of funds that are being reorganized, repurposed, and mobilized to the COVID response. If truly we think that COVID is a big threat, not just to the human life, but also to the economy, then it is in the government's interest that part of that money covers quarantine and isolation facilities and all the bills associated with it, because then can people come out and get tested and follow all the other instructions that come after that. But if here you're telling me it's a case-by-case basis, I don't know how my case will go. Then chances are I will take my chances and stay at home.
Opens the door for corruption as well.
And it does that.
Because the person who's assessing me, just look at them and tell them, look, come on, this bill of 88,000, if you just offset it, I can give you 10K.
Unfortunately, I think
I can give you 10K on the side. Uniweke kama deserving case.
Exactly.
Corruption.
I think we cannot, and
there should not be any
we
gray
cannot
areas.
run away from the fact that there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with a trust deficit for the government. We have to deal with that fact that people are not going to do what you say by virtue of the fact that they're dealing with a historical experience of things that have happened in the past. And whether you want to say that they don't really understand because they may be on the lower cadre of society or the higher echelons of status, it doesn't matter.
Or it's a new disease.
We don't understand. It doesn't matter. The fact is that in some countries where we talk about this all the time, when they talk about lockdown in China, guess what? People fell in line because everything else that you've told people to do before, whether it comes to the development of the country, whether it comes to education of children, when it comes to buffering of the health system, you said you were going to do and you did. So when you come and tell people, you know what, we're trying to handle a new situation, we need you to stay at home. And while you are staying at home, we will provide 1, 2, 3 to make sure that you are all right. The people are going to fall in line, whether they are rich, whether they are poor, whether they're educated or illiterate, whether they're young, whether they're old. Young people that we're talking about here, it doesn't matter. Across board, people did what the government asked them to do. And we cannot ignore the fact that they listened to a government that had come through for them before. And that by the time they're saying do something new, they realize, okay, these guys must be serious. We can't ignore that fact. We also want to deal with that. People, yes, act irresponsibly. That is going to happen. You're going to have a few bad eggs in the basket. Every time. When you're dealing with humans, you're going to have that. That's given. At the same time, we cannot assume that people don't understand what you're telling them. But people understand money in a way that they don't understand anything else. By the time you're asking them to bring what they don't have, and you're going to punish them for testing positive, because that's what we're looking at, testing positive for a disease that they have no control over. And there are better ways that you can manage it, and then you don't do that and implement it. People are not going to show up. You're looking for 3,000, you'll get 400. It's a direct result. 1 + 1 in this case, my friend, equals 2.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you look at the UK when before the Prime Minister was admitted, before he fell ill actually, where they're starting their own strict measures. And they said for the next 12 weeks, if you have a pre-existing condition, don't leave home. We shall take care of your medicines that you need. Anything else you need, we'll send help to you. And it was very clear. So if you have things that are clear like that government is attending to A, B, C, and D, because we know that you're from a lower socioeconomic status. So, for example, you may not be able to access food, so we'll cover this. It will not be hard for people to follow instructions.
Indeed. Let's go into this short break, take a look at weather, and come out of this conversation into another one. Yesterday was World Press Freedom Day. Today, the Media Council of Kenya is organizing a webinar on World Press Freedom Day 2020. And the theme for this year is Journalism Without Fear or Favor. Our very own Dr. Marcy Korir will be participating as a panelist in this. So out of this break, let's speak to the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya, David Omoyo, and Dr. Marcy Korir. So let's start that conversation with these two members of the panel right here. Good morning, 17 after 8.
All right, it's mostly cloudy in certain parts of Nairobi. The sun trying to peek through, though. 17 degrees, we'll have mostly cloudy conditions through most of the day. Showers will come through later then with highs of 25. In Nyeri, it's mostly cloudy. 16 degrees is what we see now. 23 degrees a high and lows of 16 with showers in the afternoon. It's partly cloudy in Nakuru at 17 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 24. And in Eldoret, it's clear skies this morning. We're going to see rain showers with thunderstorms predicted later. Highs of 22, currently standing at 15. In Kisumu, it's partly cloudy, 22 degrees. Yes, the rains will come down here later. Highs of 28 and lows of 20. Malindi was raining this morning, but it seems to have dissipated for now. Partly cloudy conditions at 27. The rain will come back, though, later with highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's mostly cloudy in Mombasa at 27 degrees. We'll see rain later there as well. Highs of 30 and lows of 26. In Dar es Salaam, it's warm this morning at 26 degrees. Partly cloudy conditions through the day. Highs of 31 and lows of 24. Taking a look into Kampala at 21 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 19 with thunderstorms in the afternoon. Further down south, it's clear skies in Johannesburg, mostly sunny conditions through the day at 10 degrees, highs of 22 and coming down to a cool low of 8. Finally, for now in Lagos, clear skies this morning at 26 degrees, highs of 32 and lows of 25.
Now coming up to 20 past 8. This is the situation in Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning, you have Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Dr. Marcy Korir, KTN's medical journalist, who's also the guest host for this season. And now, for the next 1 hour, she's also joining a panel right here in the situation room to discuss press freedom. Journalism without fear or favor. Yesterday was World Press Freedom Day. Today, the Media Council of Kenya is organizing a webinar starting from 9 a.m. going all the way up to around 1 p.m. And the theme is Journalism Without Fear or Favor. Joining us on the line is the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya, David Omoyo. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you doing? And welcome to the Situation Room.
Thanks. Second time. It's a very hot room, but today I'm lucky that I'm doing it from outside.
You're cool where you are.
Yes.
You're keeping safe, David, I can presume.
Yes, I am. And I made sure that I have water. During the last time I came, you could not offer me water.
Ooh, so you have coffee there.
It was targeted. It was to ensure to keep you hot. So, David, World Press Freedom Day, Journalism Without Fear or Favor. Just first of all, introduce us to what you're hoping to do this morning in the webinar.
Of course, the webinar is replacing a physical meeting that would have taken place.
Yep.
Because normally around this day, it's one of the 4 flagship events that the Media Council of Kenya holds every year. the others being the annual journalism awards and the media summit and the Day of Ending Impunity and Attacks Against Journalists. Those are events when we bring together all media industry stakeholders. We discuss the challenges, we chart the way forward, we find out what we have done in the past year and all that. So today the webinar is simply replacing a physical meeting that would have taken place. But secondly, the webinar, we are listening to people. Number one, we are bringing on board our journalists from across all the counties. We're working very closely with the Editors Guild and the Union of Journalists and AMWIC and other people to get our journalists from across the counties where they are in the regions and all that. We sent them facilitation a week ago. We sent each of the media associations some money to send to their members so that they can afford airtime and bundles to be part of this. And secondly, now we are bringing together ourselves and working jointly with UNESCO on one end. We are bringing together ourselves and other experts around these matters so that we can have the general discussion. We look at the panel, apart from ourselves, the Editors Guild, then we have UNESCO Regional Office, we have National Police Service Commission, Transparency International Kenya, the Kenya Community Radio Network, and Association of Media Women. And so the whole idea is allow people who couldn't meet physically to come together and do a meeting like would have happened in case there was no COVID-19.
What are you hoping to achieve, David, with this today and then moving forward?
The theme of this was Press Freedom Day, Journalism Without Fear of Favor, builds consistently to events that we've been holding over the years. We tried, number one, to protect journalists, make sure that all professional journalists doing their work are shielded from undue harassment and intimidation. So what we are hoping to achieve today, number one, is to get a reality check from the ground, to get our journalists who are working in extremely difficult situations on the ground to tell us their experience under this COVID-19, and therefore they will be able to inform us what we can intervene about. We have a journalist under lockdown in Kilifi. Is it lockdown or quarantine? We need to find which name to use. Then we have cases in CI and Kisumu where journalists have been locked down. We have hundreds of journalists who have lost their jobs, salary cuts, and others, especially in smaller community media who we don't get to hear about in in the headquarters, who totally were just requested to go away. They were already earning peanuts, and then that little money that they were earning has disappeared completely. So when we get to hear their challenges, it will assist us to design strategic interventions, and we believe that we have mobilized all our networks to be able to design and deploy very rapidly intervention mechanisms to make sure that there is money in the pockets of the journalists, to make sure that the community radios continue providing information, and to make sure that anybody attacking a journalist, interfering with journalists while at work, is brought to justice. So today we want to bring the reality from the ground so that when we have these interventions, we are not seen as people who just sat up and dreamt things from their heads.
Right. Interesting that you say that, David, because another question coming through, right now is, okay, so we're looking... When a journalist is able to gather information, and a lot of this may be from people's perceptions, and that is used to form a story or to form an opinion. A lot of times it has been called misinforming the public or misinforming populations of countries. What would be your take on that right off the bat? Because we're dealing right now with a crisis or a medical crisis where there's a lot of information flying around. Are journalists justified by sharing what people's thoughts and fears or even misconceptions are?
Definitely, a journalist is entirely entitled and allowed by law and by morality to not only relay what the CS or the Minister of Health says, but what the victims are saying. We are not. I've seen an attempt to get the people in quarantine should also be given a chance to listen, the family members to be given a chance to speak and all that. So journalists are allowed to give a voice to everyone in the entire cycle of the news information. The consumers are allowed to give feedback. People who do not believe what police spokesman or the Minister of Health is saying must be allowed to speak. If people want to stand up and say the CS has said this is not true, like we have seen happening about stories on empty coffins and stuff like that and all that, the media independent media must give these people a voice. As long as we verify that these are not, guys who try to take advantage of the situation. As long as they're legitimate people who want to be heard and who have an opinion contrary to what the government has said, they must be allowed to say that. We should not take advantage of the public health provisions, as has happened across the globe, Kenya not being an exception, to suddenly stifle voices and just have one voice telling us what is happening.
Coming off of the back of that, David, right now with the coverage of COVID-19, now with the theme of journalism without fear or favor, does the Media Council have any sort of data or information coming from journalists on attempts to stifle or to hamper them from accessing or publishing a story or telling a story?
I mean, of course, there will be no bigger one than what we have seen at national level under the Public Health Act, of everybody relying on one line of information and all that. And of course, a few unlucky fellas have been put in here and there and all that. We are not journalists anyway. But I would say that before the Public Health Act came into force and the CS do that, which is allowed in law, the journalists are always allowed, under the principle of balance, to get in touch with the subject in a story. So if we have people or other guys in authority coming and speaking what should be done, we need to give a voice. And I think we would say that we have made a very fair attempt to balance, to give different sides of the story. And so we wouldn't say that the moment we have a public health pandemic, suddenly everybody else must stop speaking and we listen to Afi House. So we just put our mics there and wait. Everybody else. Afi House speaking about people, and the role of a journalist is to go out and find the numbers we are being told, the people who are being told about. Do they exist? Do they agree with what has been said? So I think it is a few complaints here and there, but bold journalists have been able to bring the reality out.
Great.
One of your panelists this morning, is Dr. Mercy Korir. She's here, and the topic that you'll be talking to, Dr. Mercy, is on voices from the frontline workers covering the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya. Reflections. I think Dr. Mercy can give us a sneak preview of the kind of reflections that she'll be sharing later this morning. Okay.
Actually, my reflection is a question to David. I find a big problem with Article 35, access to information, especially from government, where government sort of, and this is not just from the Ministry of Health, but across board, be it ministries, other government agencies, corporations, all of them, feel like giving information to media and by extension to the public is something wrong to do. And for you to get information, literally for me, it is like pulling teeth, where you have to actually have very credible sources. Otherwise, there's no information that you'll get to verify and, question some of the things that government is asking. So for me, this has been a big problem. It is enshrined in the Constitution, yes, but it looks like it was just put there just to decorate and add another chapter to the Constitution. But in reality, it's not the case.
Morning, Dr. Mercy, and glad to have you here. Nice question. And we also feel very well when we have professionals coming in and adding journalistic, being professional, bring a professional voice to the journalism field. I'm holding on my hand now a Media Council of Kenya and the Office of the Ombudsman jointly published book, Access to Information in Kenya, a Journalist Handbook. But I have to say that the problem we have is that the way government was designed, or rather is designed, we call it serikali, you find that even a letter transferring someone from the reception to another place is written confidential.
Yes.
That means unless there is something to unveil that, it's considered confidential. A letter simply saying we want to reallocate the CEO's driver to programs and the CEO will recruit a new driver, iliandiko confidential from HR to finance. The moment it's said. So we find that half of the information in government files is accidentally labeled confidential. And not accidental is because you could call now, call the Media Council. How many staff members of the Media Council have? Mtu anakuambia, hiyo labda ulize CEO ama chair. It's a simple thing, it's a public matter. So it's the nature of government by itself that we need to hide everything. There's too much suspicion around. And I think what we have done with the Commission for Administrative Justice, the access to information about journalists must be able to ask information and get it, because while the Constitution provided for it, it hid around who can provide this information, and this matter was left to CSS, so that we can use up and intercom. Hey, I fall under the Ministry of ICT. You see now, because that law, what provisions of the Constitution, unless they are actualized, they are very cagey. You have many ways to hide around it, and now it's about any public officer. That way, if you ask me and you file it, then you can be compelled to do that, and you fail, I can, there is recourse in law, I can be fined or punished for that. But initially, as it was a very cagey thing, and as you may be well aware, the law, they say, is announced. There's always a certain comma or full stop somewhere that can be moved to make anything impossible. As the example I gave, you ask a simple question, Wangapi Media Council. It can be a private matter until we release the CS, because the law says the ministry in charge and all that. Yet it's a simple public matter and all that. So the issue is within how many days must you get the information? When you ask for recourse, within how many days must you get a reply and all that, which is what the handbook and what the MOU we have
the ombudsman.
THA, yes, have tried to sort out, because it was you try to get information immediately. It is you are dragged through the ministry and all that. But that points to another challenging Dr. Mercy, where if you suspect that something wrong is happening in a place, and you ask for information, like I want a file about the expenditure on COVID-19, for example, just an ad hoc example, because it's a hot issue now. The next thing, you get a high court order barring you from publishing anything around that. So that is part of the issue we've been complaining about, and we have actually written to the judiciary to tell them to stop giving preemptive orders, because there is recourse in law in case something wrong is punished. So there is always the fear that I can either delay and refer you to officers that won't help. But when I realize you're almost getting closer to the truth, we have the High Court where I'll go and you will be stopped from publishing or anywhere airing such information. I think you have always known the challenges of that. I think the whole idea is form a small network of people, or big as it is, and push for certain special provisions that allow that this information can go with. Otherwise, if you rely on the broad provisions of the Constitution, tutabaki tukizunguka tu and we will not access the information that we need.
Because if you look at COVID, when at the start, where any information concerning COVID had to come from the CS, and even there was a letter to the teaching and referral hospitals across the country, KNH, MTRH, KUTRH, and others, and other Ministry of Health institutions, where they were told to not provide any information to media unless they have been cleared by the CS. So you can imagine all the manner of things around the CS's table. If I want to find out, as you say, the number of staff at IDU in Bagathi, then I have to go to the CS to ask the CEO of KNH, to ask whoever is running IDU to give me that information. So these bureaucratic chains, in my opinion, are not doing good, are not really favoring the COVID response, because we as journalists, we are not asking this information because we want to have that information and sit with it and be knowledgeable. We represent the public.
Yep, and the public deserves information.
Exactly, true. And then the second one on the same line is that I find that the government officials, let me say government, sees journalists as individuals. Like when you go to a press conference, Dr. Mercy Korir is probably asking a question she wants to know. They forget that we are the fourth estate, we represent the public, and we ask some of these things because we have gathered them from the public. So and so from Nation will ask a question, and it will be seen as if they are asking for their own knowledge, as opposed to, you're asking because you're representing a larger public out there, and between the ministry and the public is the media, and they play a very critical role in passing that information. So for me, that's one of the other things that I'm still, wrapping my head around. Like, even when I sit here, I'm not necessarily, saying my own opinions, but all the many things that we discuss and find out from the sources out there.
Thanks. Let me start by the first one, the Public Health Act and all that. I also studied the Public Health Act more in detail when this matter came up, and I realized that the minister in charge of public health is quite powerful, maybe more powerful than the interior CS.
Yep.
He has extreme sweeping powers. He can ban public transport, he can ban public meetings, he can lock down entire sections of the country. That's how powerful they are. And again, you have to look at the principles of war reporting. When you have a health pandemic, sometimes, and to give it to government, sometimes government may want to get info before it goes out. And that happens even when a war suddenly starts.
Yeah.
There is the need to first of all manage that. But over time, a relationship must be built and all that. For example, to say like the CS, I don't think the CS is an individual per se in this context. It's about a clearing office in the CSS for media messages, for
it's
example.
An institution.
Yes. So I mean, when we say CS,
I think it should be the institution, not the person.
Not the person.
Well, but what I mean by law, when we say the CS, for example, you mean like there will be a clearing desk in the CSS office that goes this information so that media requests are not, we are looking for Butai Kagwe, for example.
Yeah.
It's about a desk, a full-time media and communications desk. So we expect that by getting that provision, the CS already quickly, sometimes you don't want information flowing before the minister wakes up, like wars and all attacks. You have a grace period of about 48 hours, set up an emergency response system, watch a media, this is the media contact desk and person and all that. So by that title, it's like when you say CEO, it's not me, it's about there is a media office and all that.
Yeah.
So I said that provision in emergency communication to avoid bringing unnecessary panic and all that mess is needed. You all know the case of Italy. That a decision was made by the National Security Agency to lock down the north. And it was supposed to be published at 8 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah.
The media published it at 10 p.m. the evening before. That whole night, people moved out. You all know what has happened. So there are justifications to that, but I think that the health provisions is about the spirit behind them. That you're giving a chance for the minister in charge of health to quickly cobble up an emergency team so that we don't have either fake news, because fake news comes in. We don't have unverified information, but we have transparently flowing information. However, after a grace period, then you get to get access to places and ask. And I think there has been a fair access provided over time. It's just that the reporting, the capacity of our media to ask critical questions and all that also needs to be interrogated a bit. But I think the initial locking down, so that we breathe in, out, and then allow access, I think we are doing fairly above that. Secondly, about government seeing journalists as individuals. On this one, I blame the media, and I have been very consistent.
Why?
We have seen attempts by government all the time when they realize that you can't fight media as an industry, you isolate and profile individuals. So unasema huyu ni wanani and all that and all that. The moment industry has allowed our colleagues to be isolated and profiled, they get beaten. But if you see in other places like in the US, when they pushed and took out the White House passes from 1 or 2 people, their colleagues walked out in unison. I thought we even saw last week, I think about 4 media houses in the US have said they will no longer cover Trump's live COVID-19 because he's harassing them. All that. The moment you do that, it's about industry. I spoke this very strongly in the documentary done on KTN News last night. That a lot of this harassment has succeeded because we allow people, our colleagues, to be isolated, profiled, and sometimes we have had people fired. We know that there's history, of course, because of the video. So if industry stood as one, this will happen. So about government seeing journalists as individuals is because journalists have let government see them as individuals. I'll give an example, a bad example. Our colleagues in the police service, they rarely, unless it's extreme, they will rarely isolate one of their own unless it is just too bad. One of our colleagues, Charles Owino, will be with him later today. You know that even if we sit together and understand a few things, when you throw a blanket judgment at the police service, he will quickly
hit back.
He wrap up and protect his guys and all that. Then they quietly, because they do this, isolate the individuals internally and deal with them. For us, immediately someone is attacked, we immediately go and start telling those guys who are isolating the guys, those guys are that, we think they belong to this and that. So I think that the media, we have abandoned our colleagues, and it's something we must work with because it does not look very smooth going forward. And we have made it very easy for people. I mean, I've seen very junior officials, people who would rather junior officers, even across the counties, being able to isolate and literally harass senior editors. And I wonder how. It's because the industry abandoned them.
It happens.
Is there anything that you as Media Council and the other stakeholders, the Editors Guild, probably KUJ, can do to address this? Because it makes work a little bit difficult to do.
Number one is that every single journalist attacked or harassed in their line of duty, and we get to know, we intervene. Hata kama ni saa 7 usiku, I was trying, some people were locked up in Eldoret saa 5:30 usiku sometimes. I had them released and all that, whatever time. But what we have is that we have guys harassed or sometimes beaten. They go and report. We write. And like I got a letter from the Inspector General. We had 18 cases following that. 13 of them have already negotiated behind the door and they've gotten out-of-court settlements. Yes, so that's the problem. But every single case reported to us, we follow up to logical conclusion. And we are able to, when the police can't act, we go to IPOA. When IPOA is not pushing, we go to ODPP. Like now, the last case I had, we were dealing with ODPP and IPOA.
Yeah.
That there were issues happening. Then when there is a consent out of court, all of what guys have settled and all that. What we need to do, and I have really tried to talk to all editors, industry is industry. The scoop mentality is killing, is letting us abandon our colleagues.
It's unfortunate it exists up to now. David, just stay on the line. Let's take a short break. Take a look at traffic and then we continue this conversation. On the line with us is David Omoyo. He's the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. We are discussing journalism without fear or favor. That's the theme for this year's World Press Freedom Day. And the Media Council of Kenya has organized a webinar that's about to begin in about 18 minutes' time. David Omoyo is telling us that this has been brought together by the Media Council of Kenya and other stakeholders, including the Editors Guild, the Association for Media Women in Kenya, the Kenya Union of Journalists, putting together this, bringing people to come and talk about what is happening in the media and putting it in context. Journalism without fear or favor, especially now in coverage for COVID-19. Keep it right here at 17 minutes to 9 o'clock.
All right. Have things changed? Not really. We see that we're asking you to please wear your masks when you're going out in public, getting into a public service vehicle for the protection of yourself and others as well. People still stuck around the roadblocks trying to get back into Nairobi for some reason. We will ask questions later about how you left. But okay, it seems that there's a holdup right around on Thika Road and on the Greater Mombasa Road. The Mombasa Road near the City Cabana is moving very, very slow. There's jam and it's bumper to bumper. Today is the first time we've used those words in the last 1 month, but that's what we see right now. Thika Road, Utali approaching Muthaiga, it's moving very slowly. Like we said, people are getting into the city and it looks quite interesting. We'll see what it looks like in a short while, but it's not too bad for now. You get out of there quite quickly. Spice of MKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. If there's a hold up somewhere, let us know what you see.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best
It's
exclusive radio
9:15.
station,
This
bringing
is
you the
Situation.
best
It's
mix
Kenya's
of
biggest conversation. In the room, you have Eric Latif, Nduoko, Dr. Mercy Korir, our guest host for the season. CT Muga is away for the week. On the line with us is David Omoyo. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya. Today, the Media Council of Kenya is organizing a webinar starting from 9 a.m. up to about 1:30. And the theme for this year is, the webinar is about World Press Freedom celebrations. The theme for this year is journalism without fear or favor. We're talking about the coverage for COVID-19, what the challenges that the journalists are going through, even in coverage and in their own livelihoods. David is talking about we have journalists who've lost their jobs, we have journalists who've endured hardship, we've had journalists who've been harassed by officials whom they should be getting information from. But also there's something that you mentioned, David, before we went into the break. You spoke about the quality of questions that we are getting from our journalists who are asking those in positions of authority. What did you mean? What do you have against the kind of questions that we're getting?
Well, I have nothing against them, and that's why I started by congratulating Dr. Mercy and appreciating that it gives a lot of flavor and depth when we have a professional medic crossing over to give now the public information about the same. If you understand the context, is that now we have that ability to ask technical questions.
Yep.
You understand that public health, like many other fields, are specializations. We haven't, in our media houses, I think because of a major budget crisis in the past few days, which, we haven't built specialization desks. Yeah. Like, for example, if you're going to get deep health questions, public health or other medical questions, you need to have a medical desk well-staffed and people who have interacted with the medical industry or rather the medical profession continuously.
Yes.
So I think what we have now are general beat, let me call it too many general beat reporters. They are wonderful, doing a wonderful job going to ask these health questions. The idea is that if I see someone asking to Nashida, Nairobi County Assembly, the journalist is there. Then the other day we have something at Kawangware Raya, the person is there. Then we have a health issue and the person is there. That means that we do not have a specialist. We have a
jack of all trades.
Really general specialized, jack of all trades. And, the challenge of that is that then you become masters of none.
Yes.
I think that especially health, business, that we have a craze about business and economics, you know that. And that there are certain areas we must isolate and build capacity so that when we have questions that we need answered, the journalists understand. They understand the medical policy, the strategic plan of the ministry, how the devolution of medical services and all that, the medical scheme and all. Because when we have now journalists going there and they have no background information and they are not well informed, they are unable to ask critical questions so that the people here who rely on them, because journalists have access to go and ask questions on behalf of 47 million Kenyans.
Yeah.
That ability is that you have a person access to the people who are supposed to answer these questions, but the person does not know which question to ask. So really, it isn't like a condemnation. It's about we need to invest in certain critical professions, and so that we have certain specializations in our newsrooms.
This is not a new conversation, David. I mean, this is a conversation that happens all the time, and yet media houses seem not ready to to invest in this. Why would you say media houses are not ready to invest in specialized desks? Let's say a health desk, another one, a science desk, and so on and so forth.
Two things. Number one is that I understand the budgets. In the past 5 years, I think media houses' budgets have fallen by more than 70%. But number two is that as a country, we have a certain love for politics, such that even when you have a journalist who specializes in medical reporting and all that, they are barely known. Nobody knows about a specialist in devolution, let's say in medicine or economics and all that. But the person who reports from parliament or political rallies is literally a mini celebrity around. So number one, there is the economics of it and the way we have framed our media, that politics is all that is that sells, so that we have many aspiring journalists, young journalists in the newsroom and all that. Very few people want to join the medical health reporting, because again I can tell you that health reporting seems to have strategic interest from donors. I know that especially 2 or 3 mainstream media houses have funds to help them report pneumonia and certain communicable diseases and all that. And it is not easy. That's why even us at the Media Council, we were very able to quickly put up a medical reporting grant and we got a donor within less than 2 weeks, because there's always someone like that. But we do not have people interested in that because it doesn't sell. So medical reporting now, like Dr. Mercy Korel is our celebrity journalist, because she's the specialist. We are in this pandemic. Kiisha, nobody will bother with that. We'll look for the person who knows how to.
She'll take leave for 6 months.
We'll leave for 6 months.
So we have not appreciated that in this country we have running medical issues. Like maternal issues. Malaria still kills more people than COVID-19 across Africa, pneumonia and all that. But we do not have people doing that, because that is not important. We are interested in a certain valiant who is is fighting who across the corridors of power. So by doing that, we have abandoned certain technical matters to the media, and then we have done.
You're talking about the framing in our newsrooms, but then those who head our newsrooms and media houses will actually come back to you and tell you it's what the audience wants. If medical stories don't sell, if I have a headline on medical stories from Monday to Friday, I'll see my numbers dip. And yet, if I have a Jubilee, just something, some funny story, I'm speculating that Jubilee is going to break up in 2 days. It's going to sell.
Well, yes, that is true. It's a very sad situation. I've ever been put to test by some listeners in a village in Eldoret who are telling me to tell the mainstream media, Nation, NTV, and Citizen to stop putting politics and put agriculture. And I told them, we have a channel called the Farmers TV, why don't you watch it? They told me, no. We want them to put us this. And then I told them, you are dishonest, because you're asking these mainstream guys to give you agriculture information. I'm telling you that next to that channel giving you politics, there is one that will give you this information. And they say no. So it's a complex matter. Remember, when we talk about media consumption patterns and all that, you have to put up I want to give an example, because I had a discussion somewhere yesterday about Spice FM. I think we are also writing about it in our Observer. You know that this channel is provided a break from sex talk across all radios. Everybody is Patanisho and Yunani, Bwana, Ipiganani and all that. But this media house decided that we think that people want to hear something else. And the truth is that people have suddenly realized that radio can offer something else. So while every one of us thought every morning radio listener wanted sex, suddenly people have realized that if you offer something else, more quality and all that, people will listen to it. So I think what we need is the bold decision that people want to hear. I mean, our people, while people may be excited about politics and all that, our people still want to know how to get better yields, how to get a market for their milk and all that. But that decision, you see now, like Eric, you gave me an example about within a week your sales will go down, isn't it?
Yes.
You don't need a week to focus on what, because we have seen in this country TVs and radios that were number 4 or number 40 going to number 1. And all that. We have seen new coming up. That means that you must deliberately decide and set aside resources to experiment, do research, and get a new idea. So the truth is that we need to stop looking at weekly returns. I know that we all, the circle is very small. The circle is very small, but deliberate investment. People put investment and wait for a while to get returns. If we want to see returns in 4 days, it won't work for us. So, as I say that, I think there are consumers for critical information. Like I have said, we have consumers for Spice FM. It never existed. It is not competing with certain people. So please deliberately decide and provide this information. People will listen. Eventually, it's about behavior change communication, knowledge, attitude, and behavior change. Offer something, let people know there is something else, and it will move.
Why is it difficult, David, to invest in getting, let's say, specialized reporting? When I joined the media some 3.5 years ago, that was the conversation that, we need to specialize. And then the issue has been, media is not investing. Why is it difficult then to invest if we know that this is necessary and important and there'll be consumers for it? Why is it then difficult to follow what we're seeing with money?
Absolute hand-to-mouth mentality and planning. Why am I saying this? And I am not condemning. I'll give an example of a very recent... Al Jazeera is very popular around, but it did not start very long ago. You will see that they have a White House expert and correspondent. They have an expert in London, the stock market and all that. That's all they do. There's someone who specializes in Afghanistan and all that. We have in Africa, something like that. And you notice that their reporters are not young. They do not have many general beat reporters.
It's true.
They have old guys at the game and people who know. Already people come in, even if something happens immediately, you get the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. People have been reporting on it for 27 years and all that.
Yeah.
As here, do you, for example, have a status correspondent? No, because status will send you a list of who they want this week and another one next week and all that, isn't it?
In fact, they
So
don't
you have
even
a
want
parliament
reporters nowadays. Just the camera
They
person.
just want the camera person.
They want to just talk,
Hakuna maswali.
talk at us.
Yes.
They don't want any feedback.
But, you know, an expert in State House does not mean going to the press there. It's a person who analyzes how several state houses were run, the difference between the Moi and Kibaki and Uhuru, how power, you know, an expert who knows, who will immediately refer to certain cases, isn't it? An expert in parliament will give that. What we have now are people who, he said, she said, someone who came 2 years ago there in parliament and all that. They have not studied parliament and all that. So I think it's about a mentality change. As I said earlier, this hand to mouth, you know, you want results now. You don't want to invest, and eventually we have a lot of, nothing. There's too much shallow, but nothing solid and all that. So, like, we need to get, if it's a medical specialist, because COVID-19 is within the broader medical issues, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do we have anybody ever who has been in another, we say, health pandemic before, who could advise about this? We have not done that. We're simply cobbling up. The person I saw when Sonko was fighting with people at the Nini is the person in charge of reporting from Afya House and all that. That is deliberate investment. Well, it costs money. Number one is that it costs money, but we must make it that we are here. The Standard Group has been around since 1902. I mean, we need to decide that we want to plant this for results in 2 or 3 years. When you attempted to say we want to fire all senior reporters and bring new ones who are cheap for all that, eventually you end up turning even senior, credible media products compete with. I mean, that's why you realize that we are competing with bloggers and all that, because we have lost that cutting edge of solid, well-founded journalists who we look forward to reading, because now everyone is the same. So actually, the bloggers have been their trade longer than some of the reporters and editors have.
Yes.
Longer than that. So that's basically a challenge. I am not blaming anyone. It's about our framing and ability to forecast what challenges we face. How can we work around it?
Your
have we, for example, started planning?
Your disclaimer is well noted. You're not blaming anyone, although the dagger has gone right in.
Yes. I want to throw a simple question, for example. Like, first one, we know that we will have elections in 2022. Are we doing anything about it now? We know it's a big thing. Are we deliberately?
What is anything? We are reporting that 2022 is coming.
Yes,
We are reporting alliances forming.
Yes.
Another's breaking.
Have we reviewed
People
Have we
meeting.
reviewed our successes and the failures in the last general election so that we frame ourselves better, know which regions we will? No, we haven't done. We are simply waiting. Then around 2022 March, we will be helter-skelter trying to cobble up something and recruit a few interns to assist us and all that. That inability of us to plan and focus is what we are caught flat-footed all the time.
David Omoyo, CEO of Kenya, CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Asante sana.
We'll let you get on into the webinar that starts this morning. How would I join the webinar if I wanted to join in?
Someone will send you a link in a while. Let me tell you. It is available online. So
All right.
get a link.
All right. And then we can also tell people to join in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much.
Asante sana. Coming to the top of the hour, today's proverb again, remember, when the river dries up, we shall all see where the crocodile sleeps. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Okay, Mombasa Road, everybody's asking, it's actually very slow. Kiambu Road, very slow, right around Sharks, trying to then join the Thika Superhighway. Everybody's going. Going where? That's the question. Everybody has left their homes today, guys. Thika Road traffic is back to default settings. It's the end of the month. Let's see. All right, or the beginning of the month, rather. Okay. Then coming on to Mombasa Road into the city center, it looks good. Nobody has any problems doing that today. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know if you see any problems, any issues, and we'll keep people moving.
Traffic. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I regard myself as a cabinet secretary for education, which means a cabinet secretary for all the Kenyan children, both in public and private schools. And when I'm empowered by His Excellency the President to make a policy pronouncement, like the extension of the lockdown of schools for 30 days, it does not discriminate and say this is for the public or this is for the private. So all the schools
Magoha came out
must
yesterday
comply.
in no uncertain terms, and for avoidance of all doubt, all that we've been talking about over the last 1 week, I'm saying, all right, are schools opened? Is this a one-headed monster? Does it have two heads? Are the legs where the head is supposed to be? That's the question. He said everybody, all schools in Kenya, so long as we're within the boundaries of the Republic of Kenya, what I have said is that these stories of starting school, the term opening, and he started out by saying also, being a law-abiding citizen, I am not going to dabble in matters of jurisprudence, obviously, referring to the cases that are going on in court right now. But for all avoidance of doubt, there's an extended holiday. After 30 days, we'll have a look at what is happening in the country, and if it is necessary for us to extend, we will extend. If it is all right for us to come back to school, that we will do. So there's been a lot of back and forth. There are very many private schools who are opening school and saying, you know what, we need to get back into school and we need to start this thing. No, sit down, relax, it'll happen. We'll catch up when we catch up.
According to Magoha, learning is still suspended.
Yes.
Because you see, going to school is one thing, and he gave that example of if a student came from Old Town in Mombasa and went to Alliance, and that student turns out to have been positive, they infect all the other students.
And stuff.
So, going to school physically is still suspended.
Yes,
is learning suspended?
There are two things now. Now, when we talk about learning, there are many schools now who are saying the second or third terms have begun. That is suspended. The first term has not finished. And by virtue of the fact that schools are not open, what did he say? The holidays have been extended for 30 days. Now, according to the Education Act 2013, because yes, I dug it up and read it, during holidays, learning does not take place. It's clear. It is clear. And by virtue of the fact that the CS has said there's an extended holiday, he did not say that let's sit at home. He said we are extending the holiday. And during a holiday, learning doesn't take place. This day has presented me with many opportunities to say that 1 + 1 = 2.
But he also talked about online coverage.
But he talked about that being the purview of parents. If you wanted to enter into that, you enter into an agreement between yourself and the institution. But you cannot make a blanket statement and say it is mandatory that you enter class. We have schools now, unfortunately, who are saying if you don't register...
School has started today.
And if you don't register, we'll deregister. If you don't join the class, we'll deregister and withdraw you from school.
A letter written on the 2nd of May 2020.
Unlawful act.
A letter written on the 2nd of May 2020 to parents of the Nova schools tells them that March 15th, the school is opening.
Unlawful.
And then...
The new term is beginning.
Okay,
Pay
all
school
these
fees.
apply to all curriculums. Is it curriculums or curricula?
No, it's curricular.
Curricular,
Plural, right.
Okay.
For it has been extended. All right, so it's not going to be offered. You're not going to school. But international, if they're able to offer the online learning and pupils are not going to school, because the main focus for the government is let there be no pupils congregating in a classroom. If that is still in effect.
So then that would mean the IGCSE possibly, if you look at who goes to IGCSE, can possibly afford to do online classes, and their lives could continue. Then when you come to CBC 844, then there's a problem, because a good number, let's say not even a good number, some can afford to do online or might be able to do online.
A majority.
But then there are those who, even under normal circumstances, are learning under trees.
Yep.
There are those under normal circumstances don't even have seats in their classrooms.
Yep.
And then now the third other part is we're seeing heavy rains wreaking havoc across different parts of the country. We've seen schools submerged. So those students,
all those are affected.
Yeah, those students, pupils who live around that area, mean now they have nowhere to even sleep. So is their priority getting back to
Which is why I understand Magoha's Nini of saying extend holiday. Let's not even think about teaching right now. Right now we are thinking about dealing with a health pandemic.
He says education is secondary. I'm a doctor. In this case.
What I'm thinking
education
about
is secondary.
Thinking about, let's hear what he said about the online coverage. All right.
On the issue of online coverage, first of all, on the issue of online
I'm
coverage,
going to add that into this.
First of all, the public must understand that online coverage is there. It is accessible to all the children, and for fear of repeating myself, there are many media, both electronic and others like the radio, television, internet, and what have you. And the content that is being given has been clear. You heard His Excellency the President had launched some balloons a few months ago. Quite a number of those balloons are up there. So it's not going to be an issue of bandwidth, but the issue of the end product, which is either the tablet or the computer or a smartphone. In the meantime, you should be fair to us, because you know we have...
What has he said?
Focus on the calamity.
Focus on the medical issue, the public health emergency.
Whereby it's an issue you want to continue learning, you don't want your children to stop, schools want, all those things actually don't matter.
He went round, in my opinion. Listen, so first he says online learning is accessible. It has been approved by KICD, and at the fear of repeating myself, it's available on various platforms, radio, TV, and private schools are also coming up with their own way of providing this, because private schools are able to roll this out. So is he saying I'm okay with that, or is he saying stop even that?
It's not,
because that's not what he said.
It's not, but it's not part of the curriculum. It's not part of the curriculum.
But it's approved by KICD.
Yes, but it is not part of the syllabus that is being used within schools. We heard very clearly, Term 1 is not done. If we're still talking about the CBC and 844, Term 1 has not been concluded.
Actually, yeah.
Term 1 has not been concluded.
It's
How are you
true.
then going to start Term 2? And
so what is this that they're offering
that he said
on
yesterday,
radio, TV, and online platforms? What is it? Is
spoke-
it revision? Is it holiday tuition? What is it? Because they're offering it. He's just said that they're offering something.
Yeah, it's a bridge. We spoke to a senior officer from KICD last week, and he was very clear in what he said. He said this is content that is available during the normal school term anyway. It's on TV and it's on radio, but people don't pay much attention to it because they're in school studying anyway. So it's not as if the syllabus that you're studying during term 1 has been pulled and put on TV. It's the same thing that has been on TV. They're just continuing with it.
Yeah,
they didn't start developing it when COVID came.
What they put on TV is in line with the syllabus.
It is not what they will use for you to then consume and be tested on. It isn't.
But it's the same syllabus.
Yes, but this one that they're putting on TV, they're not going to test you and say, well, it was available for TV. Let's come and test you.
However, it's delivered. It's a syllabus. Whether the syllabus is being delivered on TV, on radio, in class, it's a syllabus.
This is
if
not
it's
learning.
about linear equations, it's linear equations.
It is okay.
But what do you mean by it's not learning? Because if something is on TV and my child is there following and listening, they're learning.
I understand. But what we're saying is not within the term limits of the school year.
But it's part of the syllabus.
Yes, but it is not going to be used as justification that we were in school. This is what we're saying. Information is being given, but it is not being attributed to learning that you will now be tested on and say, I completed this syllabus. It isn't. Because in the same breath, he talked about the fact that there are people who don't have access to this, and they're cognizant of that fact. So until they have something that is complete and it is whole, give us time is what he said. Let's come to the end of the 30 days and we find that we might not be in this position. And then we need to do something about it.
So why not tell KICD guys to go home and relax?
This is a question that we have to answer.
Yeah. Because on one hand, you're saying this thing of the fear of repeating myself, it's available on TV, it's available on other platforms, but let's not focus on it. What do you mean? What are you telling me? You're putting it out there and you don't want me to focus on it. What do you want me to do?
And then second,
if you want me to go home, just tell me, you know what, there's no program.
And then it confers an undue advantage to the children who would have access to that. Because much as you're saying it would not be the basis for testing, if child A has access to TV, radio, all of these things, and they're able to follow, and child B doesn't, let's say school resumes in another 3 months. One will be way ahead of the other one, and another one will be lagging behind.
But he also said previously that when schools do open, we are going to pick up where we left off. He said that very clearly.
True, you'll pick up where you left off. But thing is, the person who has been able to keep up with what is happening on TV, on radio, any other platform, as opposed to that person who completely has no option, will have an advantage over the other one.
Oh, that's definitely true. But in this case...
Instead of having some pupils have an advantage over the others, because, you see, policies, regulations, protocols, guidelines should be made with the most vulnerable in mind. So since you know that child who's been learning in a tree is not able to access even a radio, why not put for them cartoons now that we have balloons, as he said? The bandwidth is good. They'll watch cartoons and do other social whatever skills, and then the actual hardcore learning can be preserved for school, because these other ones, much as they will not watch cartoons, they'll be able to make their own cartoons.
I agree 100%. And I've said, I think that the communication needs to be clearer in terms of then what to do. If the information is out there, are people supposed to consume it? What are we supposed to do with it? How are we? Is it going to be measured? This, that, the other thing. I agree that needs to be made very clear. But I think what he's trying to do to be safe in this point is to put kind of like an umbrella over everything and say, look, I've said this is what we're focusing on. What you choose to do, though, is that we know for a fact that he's receiving many cases in his office from schools or from parents or teachers or whatever who are complaining about the fact that they're being charged this, that, and the other thing. And he's saying, why are we charging? We're not in school. The problem, though, when we go back to the British system, let's look at what's going on in the world. The country that created the Cambridge system has closed schools. There are parents who paid for the Cambridge exam for May, and that exam didn't take place because it was not released from London. Okay? Number 2, you're charging full tuition for children who are not physically coming to school, whereby their parents have to bear, the brunt of the cost. And and we're not just talking about money here. We're talking about time in a supervisory role for the students to be at school, whatever that may be. Preparing meals, supervising ABC. The contention here, and he specifically did not want to mention this yesterday, but the contention is that schools need to then look at, because there are parents who are willing for their children to continue with the syllabus. However, it is not justified that they pay the full amount whereby half the job and effort is not being done by the school. That's the contention.
Are you ever thinking this thing? And I'm just sitting back and wondering, okay, so Magoha came yesterday and you could just basically see his pain and wondering, why am I explaining myself 17,000 times? We are on holiday.
Stop the thing.
What we are focusing on is a health pandemic. This whole issue of school, just put it on the side for now.
Yeah.
And then he mixes himself up, and at the same time he says, there's online happening.
Yeah.
And there are some private schools that are able to offer online. But you know what? We are dealing with the pandemic. Are we overthinking? Should we just take plain and just say Magoha is saying don't open schools,
don't open schools.
Don't offer education
I
for
think
now.
that's what needs to happen.
And I'm just thinking here, if this situation continues, are we seeing a situation where, if the pandemic continues, are we seeing a situation where the whole year is just blanked out and possibly students will have to restart again at the beginning of next year?
Possibilities, but he doesn't want to commit. 17 minutes after 9. Good morning. Let's take a look at weather.
Okay, sun is peeking through in many parts of the city of Nairobi today. Mostly cloudy conditions, though, in most parts. The rains will come back. It's going to be a wet week around the country. We're looking at extended rains from today until about Thursday. If we're going to look at weather patterns, we're seeing a shift in the earth in this part of the world as an earthquake that was experienced. I know many of you didn't feel it. An earthquake experienced covering Kenya, Uganda, and parts of the Horn of Africa. And we see a shift in the earth with many of the landslides that we see happening here as having been results of that shift. Okay, so we're looking at wet conditions in Nyeri, Nakuru, and Eldoret today. Kisumu as well, Malindi and Mombasa follow later. In Dar es Salaam and Kampala, we see those wet conditions as well, with, warm temperatures in most parts. In Johannesburg, it's mostly sunny throughout today, and that's likely to be the case for throughout the week. Clear conditions in Lagos and many parts of West Africa today. That rain shift having moved in some places. All right, let's look quickly in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's mostly cloudy in New York with spring in full gear already. Paris at 13 degrees is mostly cloudy today, getting ready for the summer months. And in London at 11 degrees, it's partly cloudy today. We'll see highs of 17 and lows of 8.
Spice up your life.
CS for Education has spoken.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Trying to divert my attention to discuss other matters. Those ones are on hold. Everything else is on hold. Right now, what we're dealing with is this health crisis.
Public health
it's
emergency.
A public health emergency. That's what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we telling parents?
Continue with the holiday. But I think
KICD told us last week that from today, they'll start running those programs.
It's available on TV and radio, but they didn't say that it's available for you to now, for your school, then to do this. I don't think we need to. The problem is, we don't need to start putting many things in the pot. This is it. It's available. You can watch it on TV and radio. It doesn't mean that you will then be tested on it, or you must make your children sit and watch the TV. They didn't say that. It'll be available. You can use it. Until we hear the Ministry of Education saying what KICD has rolled out on TV, radio, and online is going to be used as syllabus. Until then, stop it. What are we doing? Why are we complicating it? Don't. If you can watch it, watch it. If you can listen, listen. They're trying to make it available so that people can buffer or whatever. That is okay. When they tell us about that, then we know what to do with that information.
Or is the intention to keep children busy?
That could be it.
So you just
Could
say
be
that.
the intention is just to keep children busy, so that
So
parents
what
are able
happens-
to focus on other things.
So the schools that want to offer the same, what happens to them?
They can't charge for it.
They
You
shouldn't
kidding?
charge.
They
I
shouldn't
think the
charge
thing
for
is
it.
to
That's the
charge.
thing.
But I think also, anyway, if you look at it, the schools that are charging are private institutions. They have other responsibilities they need to meet. I think let's look at it from a larger ecosystem where this same people, and I like to look at private institutions as businesses, the same as with the private healthcare sector. They're businesses. So people are in business. They probably have a loan somewhere to offset. They have staff that are also relying on them. And if you look at this staff, there are also parents somewhere who need to feed their children. So I think if we look at it on a global scale or on a larger scale, then they're just people in the same economy that we are in, that we are trying to make sense of because of COVID, that are just trying to survive. And they're finding ways of, not that I'm saying this should happen, but they're also trying to find ways
of surviving,
in this time. And the way of surviving is by telling parents, we are offering A, B, C, and D. Pay up, whether it's 50%, whether it's 100%.
Why not just come out openly and say, look, this is where we are at. We have run out of cash to pay our staff, and we'd like you guys to help us to continue paying our teachers and our staff. Just come out there and
that might be a better discussion, conversation.
Say we are offering education and we want you to pay 100% tuition because you've got costs. Just say.
And I think parents would be happy to.
Our business does not have cash reserves. We have run out of our cash reserves. We expected that we were going to be in school now. We are not in school. We don't have any money. We'd like to pay the teachers. Can you guys help us? Say that. But this thing, like now, there's a letter that I was reading to you. A letter addressed on the 2nd of May. 2nd of May is, what day was that? Saturday. Okay. This is a week after Magoha had first said no opening of schools. But this letter talks about a commencement of second term. In term 2, until we resume in person, we will charge tuition only, and parents are requested to pay their tuition fees. Now, should the government extend the school dates into the August holiday or beyond, we will not charge any additional term 2 tuition fees. Okay?
But here...
Because they're saying that although the schools closed on March 15th, and this has been extended until the 4th, our priority as a school remains continuity of learning and the safety and continued development of our students. As we closed down our schools in March, our teams leapt into action to ensure students could complete the syllabus content that had been planned for the term. During the term break, our teams were hard at work developing a more comprehensive and interactive virtual learning experience based on feedback from students and parents. None of us knows when this will how long this will last, but he's saying that in term 2, until we resume in person, just pay the component called tuition in that invoice. Just pay for that 100%. If you pay for that, you'll not get no late fees penalties. Monthly, there can be a monthly billing option. If needed, we can come up with a more flexible payment plan on an individual basis. We can also complete our calculation of savings on variable boarding and clubs expenses from the unanticipated closure in term 1. So what remained, we can calculate and see how much we can put into offsetting some of the bill in the current second term. Basically, this is a school that's saying, you know what, we understand this is what the government is saying, but as far as we are concerned, today being the 4th, we are starting a new term, but offering online learning.
Is this one of those situations where we can say parents can deal with that school on a case-by-case basis?
That's probably what's going to happen, but you're going to have very many parents who are going to say, well, forget this. As far as we are concerned, what we heard from the CS is that term 2 is not starting. We're on extended holiday, so whether it is online, offline, whatever it is, we're on holiday. And that's what we're going to follow. All this other thing that you're saying is secondary. Forget it.
But I think, as Latif said, and I'd like to look at it comparing with Andrew Cuomo, New York governor. He sits down and explains to his constituents about the COVID pandemic, where they are cash-strapped and why they're not able to do certain things. As in, one of his press conferences have been the few that have been very honest and genuine about the situation, about the capabilities, and what his government, if I may call it that, what he can do as a governor, what he cannot do, where his hands are tied and where he's not. And I found that people understood better where he was coming from. People understood the situation and were able to, sympathize and chip in when necessary. So when there were calls by different media houses, programs and whatnot for people to donate, then it was easier because, I'm donating because they cannot afford ventilators, they're in short supply, they're only getting from this and this place, it becomes better. So as you said, if the schools came and say, we do not have cash, we still need to maintain our teachers, or we still need to maintain A, B, C, and D. Parents, how can you help?
Yeah.
It will be better.
How can we come together
Yes.
to keep our community together? Our community of teachers and workers. And
But I think we're in a society where, one, honesty is not our cup of tea all the time. And two, we are used to, giving orders from above down. We have said this. We are the board of management, or we are the principal, or we are
school.
So and so. We have decided, so do.
Yep.
We forget to involve the people.
Everybody
Even though
else.
it is in the Constitution for public participation, it is still
those
a
are
very
words.
foreign concept.
Go to the phone lines. Zachary in Nakuru, good morning.
So, morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning, Zachary.
Yeah, I hope you have had a good weekend.
Yes, we heard.
Just as I did. Now, let me tell you, we are discussing a very good thing. And let me go back to what Mr. Magoha said, that education is secondary. And I agree with him. And Mr. Eric is unfortunate that many people, especially the educated people, the very very informed people, don't seem to understand that we are in a state of war. And you pose a very good question. That we have heard that Old Town, Mombasa Old Town, is now officially confirmed to be hotspot of this disease. Yeah.
Yes.
And there are some students there who are moving there and go to inland schools.
Mm-hmm.
So, what can you try to imagine? What would happen if just one student comes and he is infected with that disease, and what is going to do to the others? At the same time, those people in the private schools, the management, should know that their clients, that is the parents who take their children there, they are normally, or they are likely, most of the ones that have been affected by job losses. And I don't know whether they understand that. No poor parents take their children to private schools. Because they are deemed to be, and it is true, they are a bit expensive. So, I would say this. After COVID, education is going to be there. Schools are going to be there. I don't know why many people are rushing. Where are we rushing to? Where are we rushing to? Let me tell you, Mr. Eric, yeah? I grew up in the old system, whereby when you are crossing school, your mother is waiting, or my mother is waiting for me there to tell me. Now you have to keep your books there.
Kazi ya shamba.
Yes, go to the shamba. You can help us take water. I think back you are beaten in the evening if you didn't do that work. And it doesn't mean that you didn't do well in school.
Yep.
So these days, I don't know what we are overrating education, and that is why there is even this kind of cheating in exams, such that at the end of the day, we are having educated fools, okay? We are having graduates, and that is unfortunate. But,
so basically, we should consider ourselves, this is a war. If we were at war, would we be asking whether there can be education happening online, here, there? The conversation would be how to survive.
Can you ask them that? My friend, can you ask that question? And if you ask them and they answer you, you earn yourself 2 beers. Let me tell you.
Thank you very much, Zachary. Thank you very much. 9:30. Let's take a look at traffic shortly, and then the conversation continues. Also, we need to look at the measures that are being implemented across the country to fight COVID-19, and in the region as well to fight COVID-19. The responses from various governments in the region. Good morning.
Around the airport turn-off junction, City Cabanas, General Motors, all the way down there. There seems to be a problem, guys. Everybody's out. COVID aside, people have things to do, it would appear. Getting off of Thika Road is also going to be a little bit of an issue right around now. Where we didn't see bumper-to-bumper traffic before, we are seeing it today. So much so that the traffic police don't know what's going on and have shown up in certain parts. Kiambu Road, right around Sharks, trying to get onto Thika Road is a problem. It's a problem. However, Mgong Road, Langata Road, everything else looks okay. Those two major roads are where we are seeing the issues. Spice of MKE, that's what we see. You get in touch with us on. It would be interesting to see what traffic looks like in the evening if it's like this now. Okay?
Thomas, you're looking at a very colorful page there, actually, 2 pages. Is that a newspaper or is that a flag? What's that?
It's of the Standard this Monday. This is out of classroom learning from the Ministry of Education. So I'm assuming, because you've said out of classroom learning, it means learning will continue.
At home.
Yes, and this is KICD, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, radio broadcast timetable for May 2020. It's there with the different subjects from English, CRE, history and government, Kiswahili, all the works. It's there, a whole timetable. And these programs, according to KICD, start today from the 4th of May. And then from radio, so this content timetable, Radio Taifa, because the first one is on KBC English Service. Then Radio Taifa has its own timetable for grade 8, grade 3. Grade 8 is still class 8, right?
Yes.
Grade 3, then there is a bit of Fasihi, Kiswahili. So I think this is Swahili sessions. And then they've gone ahead to give you the frequencies to access if you're in Nairobi or any other part of the country. That's for the English service and Radio Taifa. And then there is a Edu TV program still for May 2020. And this is a whole page with a timetable. Like, for example, let me pick which one. Language activities, 10:55 to 11:25 a.m. That's on Monday. Tuesday, same time, there is mathematical activities for PP2. So there's a whole schedule of things that you can learn. And then, interestingly, they've also put for you the roles of parents in competency-based curriculum in bullet points. That you should provide basic necessities, protect your child from physical and emotional harm, instill and nurture morals and values, teach and guide children to make the right choices, to make them aware of consequences, instill a sense of responsibility, enhance learning achievements, engage with the teacher to enrich your child's learning experiences. So this means teacher engagement will be a key part of this CBC. Do we consider this CBC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So teacher engagement is still part of it. Obviously, love your child, monitor your child's growth, identify your child's natural talent, discuss observed character, behavior, and indiscipline issues regarding your child with teachers and take necessary action, engage in peaceful and prompt resolution of conflicts that may arise. So, yeah.
This changes the whole conversation, you know, because what we are saying is that KICD is rolling out classrooms from today, May 4th.
May 4th.
Today is Monday.
Yes.
If you tune into English service of KBC, and the English service of KBC is starting from 9:10 up to 4:50 p.m.
Yep.
9:10 to 9:30 was English grade 1. And then you take a break at 9:30 for educational news and announcements.
That's for 5 minutes.
That's, for 5 minutes. And then 9:35 to 9:55, CRE grade 3. Then you go like that. So today they have English grade 1, CRE grade 3, Maths grade 4, CRE standard 6, Social Studies standard 5, Maths standard 6, English standard 8, Maths standard 8, like that, all the way up to History and Government for Form 3s. So every hour, basically, we are dealing with a different class. Grade 1s are only going to be in class for 1 hour. English, in the morning between 9:10 and 9:30. They're done.
They're done.
Now we are at the education and news announcements. Shortly, we'll be beginning with grade 3s offering CRE. Then we'll go to grade 4s getting math. Grade 6s with CRE. Like that. Throughout. In Kiswahili, at the same time, Monday at 10:05, we shall have Fasihi Tumbo Form 3 and 4 and Kiswahili service. And at 10:25, we shall have grade 8 learning something. And then Tuesday. So Swahili service only offers a short period or a short window between 10 and 11 a.m. The English service is the entire day. They only take breaks for news. KBC News comes in, goes, but the entire curriculum is being rolled out there.
Is okay. Through who?
KICD.
Exactly. Not through schools.
Listen.
Are they doing it through schools, or are they saying schools now watch KBC?
But here, remember, they have...
Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I don't see what you're saying. What are you saying?
But they've given you the role, your role as a parent.
That's fine.
And it involves the teacher.
Teacher to do what?
So what you're saying, what your argument is that everybody should just be listening to this. Your private school should not come and tell you, I can offer this better.
No, they shouldn't. And then you charge for it? No, they shouldn't.
They say engage with a teacher to enrich your child's learning experiences.
Yes.
How are you doing that?
If you want to engage, if you want to ask a teacher a question, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to seek some explanation of what they're teaching on TV, you can go ahead and do that.
But
I don't hear them.
Magoha was okay, and he said that in that yesterday's press conference. He said he knows KICD is rolling out this, and also he knows that private schools are coming up with ways of offering this same curriculum through online learning, and he's okay with that.
However, what overrides all of this
is the cost.
Schools with their systems and everything, there is no learning because the holiday has been extended.
But here is learning.
For the whole of May.
It's okay.
Here is learning.
It's for me.
Right now, today.
It's engaging the students.
Today.
It's engaging the students.
As we speak.
It's engaging the students. And when schools open or whenever people are there physically, they're not going to come and say, aha, we're going to continue from where we left off with radio and TV. They're not going to do that. They won't. So for me, this is engaging the students while they're on holiday.
These 2 pages are to keep the student busy.
Busy, absolutely.
This is learning.
They're not going to come back and say, on May 4th at 11:30, we finished Kiswahili, Sanifu, whatever. Now we are carrying on from there. They won't do that.
Listen to what they're saying. Learners, parents, and teachers are advised to ensure they use KICD approved content to enhance quality curriculum delivery.
Still,
what they're offering now, CRE grade 3, you want to tell me it's a revision of what they studied last year or in January?
I don't know. I can't tell you that.
It is curriculum.
We might need to tune in.
It is curriculum. When we spoke to the KICD senior officer last week, he said they're offering what's in the curriculum.
It's okay. But the overriding thing here, and that's what we need to stick to, in the absence of other communication or information, you can use this to enhance your life. You can use this to keep your minds busy. But the holiday has been extended for 30 days from today, May 4th.
So when schools reopen, we pick up from where we left off from the
March
beginning of 15th.
It's okay. That is in terms of curriculum.
So you can use this to keep yourself...
Nothing stops schools from offering the same thing that is being offered by KICD.
But they shouldn't
charge.
They
can do that, but they shouldn't charge.
Why not?
Call it holiday tuition.
Yeah,
because according to the Education Act, I say it's okay. Agree with you yourself and the parents what you're going to charge if they want to be involved. But it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory. That's what we need to understand here. It's not mandatory. Neither will it be used to deem coming forward that they will say, actually, you know what, you can't resit this exam, for example, because we taught using KICD approved syllabus during the holiday. You can't. It's not mandatory. That's why he also said schools should agree with parents. Agree amongst yourselves if you want. And then he said that one we'll call it holiday tuition. Like glue, like super glue to paper, my friends.
As far as you're concerned,
holiday.
Children should be on holiday.
It's not me who said it. Magoha
is saying yes. There's extended.
And when he finished saying all those things, he said
Magoha
came again and
schools
said,
are not open.
When he was, you see, like a cake, he baked the cake very well.
This is Ministry of Education.
When he finished baking the cake, the icing that he put on top, and that was the last thing that he said. All these things that you're talking about now, they're trying to cause confusion. Eric Latif, secondary.
Medical calamity. We're dealing with a medical calamity.
He did not use the word holiday at any point.
He said we are dealing with a medical calamity.
He said
when he started the conversation,
medical calamity.
He said that the holiday extension is still on. When he started. And if we're still talking about baking a cake, the ingredients that you put at the beginning.
Extension. It is school closure extension.
Holidays.
He did not order a holiday from the 15th of March.
When he came back last week when he made the statement that he did last week
holiday
Sunday,
was to expire
he said
today.
no. He was clear. He said what is going to happen is that we're extending holiday for the children from the day school was supposed to open, which is today, May 4th. On that he was clear. And I'm sure John, wave at John, he can find us that clip and can play it tomorrow if you like. It's there. I heard it myself. I was there.
With your own 2 years.
I heard it. I was there.
Yesterday when he spoke, he
I didn't say yesterday. I said last week Sunday. That's what I said. Last week Sunday.
Yesterday supersedes the previous day. Yesterday when he spoke, he did not mention
Eric,
anything like holiday.
Leave it. You want you.
See, the thing is, Eric,
and that's why KICD is rolling out from today. The 4th is rolling out this program.
Complications here. Deal with what we said. Don't confuse yourself. You get headache for nothing. Leave it.
But anyway, Eric, if you look at this program, if it's for the entire month, which it is May 2020, I'm looking at it many years ago when I was in school. If I was in one class, then from Monday to Sunday, it should be lessons for one particular class. But this one's like grade 1 was in the morning, today in radio, then grade 3, grade 4, grade 6, grade 5.
Everybody gets one lesson a day.
Yeah. So it's really, my conclusion is this is just to keep children busy, to let parents go and look for school fees to pay when schools open.
Abi?
It's the same thing. So even when he said, private schools have come up with a program that can also assist in the same way.
To keep children busy.
Yes, to keep children busy.
Then don't charge.
And if a private school has now written to the parents and said, we have come up with a program and we expect you to pay, what is...
No. They should be, we have come up with a program or a plan. What do you think? Can you chip in?
Can you? If you can't, you can't. But we're not forcing you to do so. And we won't say that if you can't, we'll deregister your children or withdraw your children. Then you start to dance with illegalities. In this case, if you can, you can. If you can't, leave it. What is it? Why is it so difficult to Eric? What's wrong?
Bernard in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning, Andu and the other panelists.
Good morning, Bernard.
Good morning, Bernard.
Eric, today, for the first time, I think you're wrong. I'd like to support Andu in what she's saying.
What is she saying?
I think when you look at this curriculum, basically it's just to keep our kids busy. And I'm saying that, one, as a parent of both a lower class child and a secondary school child. The reason being that for secondary school kids, the interaction with the teacher is paramount. Whether they have all the material in the world, without direct supervision and instruction, I think the quality of that instruction would be compromised.
Right.
The other thing I also wanted to put in is that, as I said, I'm a parent of a child who is actually he's in kindergarten. And we are still going back to the issue of private schools asking us parents to pay school fees. Yet, I think I saw a directive from the ministry clearly state that children in kindergarten and nursery school are not supposed to be paying any fees, or actually they're not supposed to be engaged on online instruction. Yet, the other day I received a notice from the school stating they're opening and they want us to pay fees. They're opening school tomorrow. So I'll be engaging them today and I'll give you guys feedback. But of course, I don't think the engagement is going to be very nice because if they're asking us to pay fees, yet the government has clearly instructed for kindergarten, for goodness sake. No, not silly, Eric, because this is a kindergarten child. How are they going to engage online? No, really. You know, they go to school to play most of the time. So I'll be calling in to let you know how it goes.
All right.
And then lastly,
the high school student?
The high school students are doing very well. Actually, I have to commend the Minister of Education on that. Incidentally, she is in a public school.
Okay.
I have to say the engagement is extremely intensive. They are doing exams online. We are getting the results. We are engaging with the teachers. They are busy throughout the day, and she's saying she's getting a lot of value for it. So probably what the government...
Are you paying school fees?
No, we paid school fees in first term. We have not been asked to pay anything as yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've not been asked to pay anything as yet. So I think I have to commend the government on that.
So
because it's a public institution.
If we look at her contemporaries who are in private school,
yes,
if the private school wanted to offer the same kind of assistance that your daughter is getting in a public school, it would come at a cost.
I would say definitely.
What should the private school do?
I think what they need to do is look at what is the government offering, what is the charges. I'm sure they're able to get a breakdown of the expenses that the government has gone through in developing that curriculum, and also engaging the teachers. Because you see, I think a bigger chunk of this goes into paying, in private schools, it goes into paying teachers their salaries.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But the public schools, teachers are paid by the TSC, of course, the government, but through the TSC.
Yeah.
So for them, they are on a salary because whether they are teaching or not, the government has to be able to pay them the salary.
True. Yes.
So what I would like to probably suggest is that the private schools should look at what the government costs are in terms of providing this curriculum, then try to match that, so that then the parents in private schools do not feel like they are being exploited.
Right.
Because I think that is a big
That's
problem.
the bone
But
of
it has a
contention.
cost. Yes, I have to agree it has a cost. And the judgment the other day that probably the parents should be able to pay 50%, I think that is correct. And the private schools should just accept that. Because there's a lot that they're not offering online. There's a lot of things, like you guys were talking about swimming the other day. They're not swimming, they're not doing the overseas trips and all that. So they shouldn't be charging for those things. But lastly, the other thing that I also wanted to comment is about the same curriculum being the mode of reaching the students. I grew up in a place in Trans Nzoia and worked in areas of West Pokot and Turkana, where even affording a radio set is a problem.
Yep.
And these students, there are very many. There's very many students in public schools or in the rural areas are unable to access these media. So the government should look at a way, either probably provide the tablets the way they are saying, or provide radio sets. I don't know what would be easier for them. But there are those very many students who are not able to participate the same way my daughter is able, because she's in Nairobi, she's able to go online, she has a phone, and all that. But there are those kids there who don't have those gadgets.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Basically, at the end of it,
have a good day.
you've come round to saying exactly what I've been saying, that schools are going to be able to offer some assistance to their students during the holidays and now during this extended 1 month.
That's why I say today for the first time you are right, Eric.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
That was
Have
the
a good
opening
day.
statement. That was his opening statement.
11 minutes to 10 o'clock. Good morning. This is The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600. Call in. Join the conversation.
everything nice. Alright, okay.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Patient Elizabeth Yane is a popo.
It's a bye-bye. Wow.
There's another patient who is a goat.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the kind of response that we're seeing from regional governments. We have seen what our friend in Rwanda has done, President Kagame. We have seen what the Mzee in Uganda has done. We have seen what our friend in Bujumbura is not doing.
Yeah.
He's campaigning.
Everything is happening as
He's
normal.
campaigning up
Business
and
as
down.
usual.
We see our fellow Kenyan in State House, what he's doing with the government. And we are seeing now what our ndugu yetu, John Pombe Magufuli, is doing in Tanzania. Basically, here he was raising questions about the validity of their
Even these
testing
tests that
kits.
people are shouting about, they're testing and
Yeah.
finding positive things
Yes.
in inanimate objects.
Yeah.
That's the problem
as you
here.
were saying, for me, it would be a question on the whole testing process, because testing is not just the sample getting to the lab. There is a whole sample collection. There's even the documentation itself. There's the actual preparation, the actual testing, preparing the results, and releasing the results. So for me, looking at it and giving our brothers in Tanzania the benefit of doubt, is that it's a good time to audit your testing process, to do a good postmortem and audit it and see, have you actually been getting the true picture of what is happening, or is it that there
are loopholes somewhere
in
the entire process.
Exactly. Instead of now, because his tone was ridiculing the whole process.
Just dismiss the whole thing.
And no, you see, if you dismiss the whole thing, and here we have a situation where people are trying to understand a new illness, trying to understand and, adjust their lives accordingly to fit in, when now somebody of his caliber comes up and speaks like this, then there's a good big section of the population that will also just start dismissing everything that comes out of that. And it is a problem. And it's not just a problem to Tanzania, it's a problem to all the neighbors of Tanzania, Kenya included.
I see him raising another issue, though. He's raising the issue of these test kits that we are receiving. Going by what the rest of the world is saying, oh, how come Africans are not dying? Oh, how come we're not seeing so many cases? Oh, Africa is not testing. And then some of these test kits are donated. Others you're buying through very lengthy process of identifying where you're going to get these test kits because they are a rare commodity. You finally get them, they come, and these are the kind of test kits that they're supplying to us. This is what we are getting. Test kits that really are finding purpose with COVID-19.
Well, so I say a postmortem of the entire process is necessary. And then before they even started testing, the practice globally is for you to validate your kits. It was done in Kenya. It's been done everywhere. And here, because the Jack Ma Foundation and the Alibaba Foundation donated test kits to all African countries, then it's a time for Tanzania to ask Kenya, what did you find? It's a time for them to ask South Africa, to ask Ethiopia, and also for us guys to ask everyone else, what are you seeing with your test kits from this and this particular batch?
Are there irregularities?
Are there any irregularities? Is there any fault? Because truly we've seen some of the European countries return some of the diagnostic kits because there were issues with them. So it is not to entirely dismiss what is said, but it's a chance to, audit the system and see if it is, if it's actually working. So I wanted to bring your attention to page 14 of the Standard, and this is Gado. There is a coffin there, written truth, in the middle of the night. The full moon is there, and it is being buried. And there is somebody who's overseeing that process of burying the coffin, holding, the lamp. You know, that very traditional, it was a lantern, where I remember back in the day, it was, if it was your turn to clean the glass, should you break it, my friend, you look for somewhere else to sleep.
So what is Gado implying?
So the guy overseeing this burial is Magufuli himself.
So people are being buried at night.
No. The coffin is written truth.
So the truth is being buried at night.
The interpretation is yeah, and it reminds me of the Washington Post, and where they say democracy dies in darkness. So I think there is a lot to learn and to read from not just this, but from what Magufuli is saying. A lot
to pick from this. We'll come back tomorrow and pick up on this and see what exactly is Tanzania doing. What are they doing? What numbers do they have? What institutions are responsible for this testing? What has happened in the background for this testing? Where have they received these testing kits from? And then also let's look at what other countries are doing. Uganda has basically said, Museveni said, we are dealing with what we are dealing with here, but we must remember that we are interconnected.
Yep, we are.
As East Africans, we are interconnected.
And if possible, Kenyans living in Taveta or that side of the border, would be good if we can talk to them. Or if they
Isibania, the governor is saying we need to close this border at Isibania.
He's asked for that ASAP to happen because he sees what's happening on the other side.
People have already tested positive and they've crossed over from Tanzania. They're coming in. The cases that we are seeing in that county, what county is that? Migori?
Yeah, that's Migori.
It's testing positive. And he's saying, look, we need to close this Isibania
So
border.
we also need to find out about
Magadi,
Taveta, those regions,
Namanga.
Namanga.
Magadi, Namanga, and down like that.
Because that will be an indication of what's happening on the other side of the border.
Indeed. Coming to the end of the show, we'll be back here again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Let me remind you of today's proverb, and then Nduoko will give the perspective of the proverb. When the river dries up, we shall all see where the crocodile sleeps. It's a Ghanaian proverb.
If a crocodile sleeps.
If a crocodile sleeps is what Dr. Mercy is on this morning, but that's another whole kettle of fish. So clearly, whatever could be covering the underbelly of things, when that moves, you see what things really look like underneath.
They're
I think that's very apt.
completely exposed.
Yep.
Completely exposed. Dr. Mercy says this all the time. COVID-19 has dried the river. Now the crocodile is right here. We can see it
That
in
thing
the
that looks
bedroom.
so scary, or you're not sure where it's coming from, now you can see it.
We can see it in the bedroom.
It reminds me of the emperor, when the emperor is naked.
No clothes,
Naked.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for tuning in. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now until 2 p.m. uninterrupted music, and then Monique will be here 2 to 6, and then the adults in the room from 7 up to 10 p.m. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.